Okay, let's debate.
Um, yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I think you could probably change my opinion on patriotic socialism, but I still don't think I fully grasp exactly how you see patriotic socialism moving forward when discussing like where this country is materially headed and how that path, affects the working class in America relative to the destruction of imperialism, right? Because my perspective on patriotic socialism is this country, and I don't really see what you mean by America isn't a civilization, so maybe we could talk more about that. But I see America definitely as a civilization, and it's it's the heart of Western civilization, and it's the heart of NATO. And these the way America is materially built on the surface of the earth, meaning like the actual physical structure of America, the phone lines, the trains, the cars, this is its own American reality. It's unique relative to other countries in the world because imperialism is directly tied into the economy, which materially is reflected in the society itself. When you look at how the trains are built, I live in Los Angeles right now, and I agree this city is fucking satanic. And one of the reasons why is because there's like horrible, horrible traffic everywhere because it wasn't designed with people in mind. It's not like North Korea. It's not like China. The civilization itself is it materially exists as a different being on the planet than these other civilizations. So I think when you talk about patriotic socialism, I just don't see a path forward for which you can unite the American working class together against the deep state when this country runs on the deep state, meaning that in the short term, if the imperialist nature of America were to collapse in on itself in the short term, this would be destructive for American society in total. So when you're leading an American patriotic socialist movement, what what are you binding? What vision are you bringing like the
Based.
people through? Like what vision of the future are you bringing the people through? Because to me, I see a future that is very much coming. It's already coming, and I don't think it really fits in your framework. But I'd like you to explain that to me more, if you could.
The the future you're talking about is socialism.
Okay.
It's a revolution in the forces of production. We just lack the political will to be worthy of it, basically. But yeah, yeah, every revolution in the forces of production does take the form of some kind of socialism, right? In history.
Okay.
Because it
Okay.
requires the state to intervene in some kind of way, specifically, to basically
I
to
I don't want.
initiate policies and actions on behalf of the majority of people, to retain sovereignty and retain its existence, right?
Mhm.
So when so you said a lot of things. You said you don't see how in the current direction how can the working class be united against the deep state, but the working class is already being united against the deep state. It's just that communists or socialists are not leading the effort, and there's a big mistake people make. And actually, someone raised this in my Discord, and I can address it right now, which is like, what is the relationship between politics and like directly the standard of living or how easy it is to live and what we depend upon? So, like, for example, you could say, well, Americans' way of life is dependent upon the unequal economic relationship between the United States and other countries. Well, this is a really bad simplification of understanding like global systems theory and
Could
understanding
I
how.
interject? Could I interject really quick?
Go ahead.
Could you repeat what you just said there? Sorry, my mind's going a million miles.
Repeat what?
Just the very last thing you said.
The so for example, a lot of people say, well, why would Americans rise up when the
Yeah.
American way of life is dependent on, like, for example, deep states policies?
Right. Right.
So someone raised this point in my Discord, and they were basically like, well, you know what? Lenin is arguing against Caleb Maupin because Caleb is saying that the essence of communism is to increase the productive forces and raise people's standard of living. And he pointed out how Lenin was arguing against these German social democrats who were saying that a revolution in Germany right now would lead to a decline and a deterioration in the standard of living, and therefore it's not in the workers' interests to pursue it. Right? So here you have direct evidence of Lenin contradicting Maupin. But the issue here is that, first of all, it doesn't take into account time, right? There's a temporary sacrifice that has to be made for the long term. Standard of living being raised, right? So that's the issue of time that's not being taken into account. But the more fundamental problem posed by this is, what is the relationship between people's political interests and their immediate standard of living and way in life? The truth is that it's indirect. Even if Americans are not going to let a deterioration in their standard of living stop them from opposing imperialism and opposing the ruling class, because there's no direct relationship between those things. It's an indirect relationship. And if it's an indirect relationship, they will feel the effects of their struggle and their action, maybe in the form of a deterioration in their standard of living, but that's a side effect of struggle. Human beings will sacrifice their way of life. Politics is not about direct consumption. Politics is about a war within like the symbolic order. It's about a war of meaning, right? It's about a war of being, right? And for this war, since politics is an extension of war, people will even give their lives for this war, right? It's not a question of people will be unwilling because they don't want to lose their standard of living. They don't have a direct political relationship to their standard of living to begin with. Their standard of living will rise and fall, and their political relationships to the state and to the political class war they won't feel the direct relationship, right? It's not like, for example, the signifier that's being triggered when people rail against the deep state is, I'm going to have less steak for my barbecue. The signifier specifically pertains to an issue of corruption, an issue to class warfare, right? It's not directly about consumption.
Yeah, but see, like, are you speaking? You said earlier, and you're kind of alluding to it here. In America, I think really America is a unique case because you mentioned political will. To me, it's like, how so in this country? Political will in what sense? Like, what is the alternative? Because to me, this is just like like American politics. To me, is not really a war. Like, maybe politics, if you're talking in a broad universal sense, sure, but like, to me, American politics at this point is mostly just the Pentagon operates entirely on its own for the most part. Like, the CIA is really working independently, and the White House acts as a PR room for the face of the American civilization. Like, when they put these people out for the State Department, whether it's Biden or Trump, like, they're all actors. Like, at the end of the day, they're all actors. They're not those individuals that are then conceptualized in our mind, and it starts crafting our narrative, which is the basis from which almost every American is going to operate at. Because, like, even what I'm saying is, even in America, if you look at communities like Jimmy Dore, I love Jimmy Dore. I think he's a great guy, but like, if you read his community, like, they are very much anti-China. He said something decent about China, and his whole today in the stream, his whole chat was going against China. Oh, all the hospitals are falling apart, and they're reflecting institutions that exist that are interwoven with the military-industrial complex. So
I think it's a lot simpler, though. I don't think you have to talk about institutions and the military-industrial complex. I think you just talk about the fact that for reasons that actually might relate to the propaganda coming from the military-industrial complex, one way or another, there has come to be an association between China and the all-encompassing tyranny of the government, and specifically like the new type of tyranny that Western governments are attempting to. They see in China a dark future, more or less, right? So this is because they have acquired a false understanding of China. If they're presented a China in a different light, actually, even just based on facts,
Is that phenomenon possible? Like, is it possible for there to be a movement inside of America in 2022 or within the next 10 years in which it's just accepted broadly that it's okay to have a popular view on China? Because let me tell you, like, I was just reading I don't even play tennis. I was reading a tennis magazine at my friend's house the other day, and I turned one page, and it's like the most ridiculous.
yeah, we have a lot of anti-China
Right.
sentiment and propaganda.
So I'm
So
realizing so what I realized recently is that it's so beyond, like, everything you hear bad about
I
China.
don't think it's a metaphysical, impenetrable like mystery. I think
No, I
you
don't think
can.
it's a
I think
mystery
it's very
necessarily.
easy to convince people that China is not, in fact, the thing they're
I've done
being.
it. I've done it to a bunch of people. My friends did it to me. I used to watch fucking. Oh my god, I used to watch Vosh, dude, for a while. It was fucking terrible. Holy fuck. But I got out of that, luckily. Um, Fuck, I debated him when I first became an ML, and I didn't do a great job because I had no idea what the fuck I was talking about. But yeah, a whole different fuck. But I just don't. I still, when you talk about patriotic socialism, so like, are
I
you
think we really
telling
need to get to like the point of what the contention is, right? We need to get to the point of what the issue is.
the contention is that I don't think patriotic socialism as a phenomenon can coexist with the mechanisms in society that American people are bound to. Like,
Which one specifically?
um, just like the way society is, the social sphere we live in is very much based on consumerism, and that consumerism is very much based on the United States' ability to sanction other countries and
That's actually
leverage
not true.
Not
So
true.
no, the structure of a consuming China is becoming a
Yeah, but America doesn't really produce anything. It's like anymore,
that
right?
doesn't help America or Americans. Okay? There's a very wrong view of consumerism according to which we are like the fat guys in Wall-E and everyone's our slave because they make things for us.
No,
But
I don't think that's
well,
true.
no, I'm sorry. Let's please not mistaken this for me saying, "Oh, there's no more." I don't care about nuance. First of all, I don't care about
Yeah.
nuance. I
Okay,
care
sure.
about good generalizations. Okay, so there's good generalizations. I don't. It's not that it's wrong because it's more nuanced. It's fundamentally wrong because it doesn't. It mistakens what makes a country have an industrial edge. A country is going to be more powerful and more successful when it's manufacturing things. And it doesn't matter who it's manufacturing things for, okay? It's just manufacturing things, and it owns those means of production nationally, right? So the fact that we don't produce anything here doesn't mean that we're in some kind of dominant position. It actually means that jobs are becoming worse in quality for the majority of people, and therefore the spending power of people is becoming pegged to credit and debt, specifically debt printed by the government or debt taken on personally, which is enslaving them to the banks. So, I mean, like, that specific problem you described of us not producing anything has literally been the source of a lot of the populism within America against the status quo because people are
But
not content.
populism. But if you look at that populism, look where it goes. Like, it
I
doesn't
don't
go.
think it's gone anywhere. I think it's still
It has,
here.
but it's very much into the establishment. Like, what are the
And
anti-establishment things?
okay, and I
Like,
don't
you're like,
think I
what
just
is the
I
populist base? What is the populist base in America? Because if you're talking about a populist base like Tucker Carlson's base, which Tucker Carlson occasionally has good views on some things, Tucker Carlson's base is just like the purest form of liberal you can get.
yeah,
Like,
but
they
I
are
also
liberal.
think you are
I mean,
engaged. I think
yeah.
you're engaging in something called idealism, where
Okay. I mean,
you are look.
I know the scientific, like, you can, I know what it is, but go
I don't
ahead.
think you know what I'm going to say though. I think what you think is that you're not actually addressing where populism comes from or what it actually is. You're addressing its established manifestations, right? That exist
Well,
now.
yes, I am
Which makes it impossible for you to anticipate future forms of populism.
well,
And
no, not necessarily. I
okay,
don't see why. I don't see why that would be the case. You're saying, right, because since I'm observing the current
yeah,
populist
there
view of
are a
America.
lot of ambiguous forms of populism that have not been established into a neat box yet.
But isn't that something different? Because to me,
No, it's not.
populism. Yeah, why not? Why
I don't
not?
see how it's different. For example, where New
Let me.
Yorkers are
I'll
come.
explain. I'll explain why I think it's different. I think it's different because the populism exhibited in America is an individualist manifestation, to borrow a word you just used. Like, it's not populism like in the USSR or in China. Like, it's just not. When populism American comes up, it's band all together. We don't give a shit about anyone else, but it's not an actual sense of for the people. Like, Tucker Carlson's base doesn't really give a fuck about people. Like,
No, that's
you
all
see that.
Hold on. All populism is, by your own definition, individualistic.
No, because when I say band together, I don't give a fuck about anyone else. I don't mean that.
That's materialist populism.
No, because now I don't mean that as an idealistic universal. I'm not saying band together. Everyone who bands together is abstractly bad, and if you come together, then that's bad. Because no, that's not.
I
what I'm
think
saying.
you don't know what I'm saying at all. I'm saying all populism is based not on morality, not on compassion, not on
Okay.
empathy, but actual material interests of people, right? So yes, it's always by definition,
But the
as you
material is
bizarrely describe it, individualistic. Okay? It's not moral. It's not based on having
it's
concern for
not based on
others.
no, it's not based on morality. I agree. It's not.
It's not compassion.
It's
Compassion has
not.
nothing to do with politics. Compassion
No,
is
it's
for
not.
puppies and possibly
Compassion is
like
yeah, compassion is like a it's like I don't want to say icing on the cake, but it's just a byproduct of something that exists more fundamentally. Yeah. So
okay.
I mean,
It's when you say they band together, we don't give a fuck. Well, that's what all populism is.
okay. So let me put it this way: if you, I don't think necessarily like you're talking about, you're interpreting it as if I'm saying it abstractly, and you're saying that the phenomenon. So like you're saying the phenomenon in China, for example, the collective. You don't think there's a collective force that is fundamentally different between Chinese populism and American populism? Because when you look at American populist movements, they tend to be white nationalists. Like, does that count as an American?
You're not
populist?
talking about populism. You're talking about the superstructural apparatus that is giving ideal form to the popular
Well, yeah. I
uprising.
mean, aren't they tied
So the
together
difference
though?
is that China has a
Well,
leading communist party. That is the only difference. Is that the communist party in China leads the populist sentiment. That's the only difference.
that's the only difference.
That's the
You think
only
the difference
difference.
between America and China is that there's a communist party in China and that's the only difference? Or do you think that the reason there's a communist party in China is because there was a history behind China which led towards that becoming a reality, which is just materially extremely different from the history in which America was built upon?
It's both, okay? Obviously, China's unique history and civilization.
Right. I mean,
Hey, can you just stop fucking interrupting me? Okay? It's obvious that China's unique history, okay, gave rise to the circumstances out of which communists would be victorious. But you cannot underplay the role of communist consciousness and the role of the competence and effectiveness of communists specifically in being able. Now, obviously, there is a historical reason. I'm just saying that doesn't say anything prescriptively
okay.
about what communists in America should be doing. We can't sit here and say, oh, we don't have the correct historical conditions to rise to power because we're different than China. We are different from China. And competent communists should be able to articulate those differences. And also with it, we need also a better theory of why Russia and China were more disposed to communism. And if we have that type of reflexive theory, communism can be victorious in the West and in America. And that's been the whole purport of my project, is that the reason communists have failed in the West and in America isn't just because of differing historical factors, but also because of the theoretical insufficiency of the communists in these countries
why is
that
that?
have disallowed them to actually learn from the experience of Russia and China.
Theoretical, like, do you mean in how they actually applied theory, or do you mean they actually just didn't know theory themselves?
Western communists did not know how to interpret and learn from the victory of communists in the Soviet Union and China. Like, for example, Western communists did not interpret Mao's victory in China by trying to have an American populism and translate that into American conditions. All they did was try and replicate the ideological fanaticism of the Red Guards during the late stages of the Cultural Revolution, completely sidestepping the point and the meat and potatoes and the essence of why communism was victorious in China. We can translate this essence into America. We just have to know what we're doing. And communists in this country don't know what they're doing.
But like the idea that you just need better communist leaders in America to then free the minds of the Americans living in America.
No, we don't need to free their minds. We just need.
To me, that's backwards from the way it would go. Like, you can't just present good ideas to the American people that are totally not in alignment with their crafted reality of what they live in due to growing up here.
That's literally what's happening. That's already happening.
About how Western communists were so unsuccessful. Yeah, because they grew up in the West, and even they were reflecting their own, society at the time.
Look, you're basically engaging in this like philosophical confusion about the relationship between free will and determinism, right? And of course, Marxism-Leninism has a very specific articulation about this relationship, and it's that freedom is insight into necessity. So being born in the West is not an excuse for being ineffective. It may have made it so it was less easier for you to stumble into victory just because of the passive result of your environment and your conditions around you. But the whole point of theory and consciousness is to be able to learn from those things. So in China and Russia, when communists accidentally, and it's not because they're superior humans in Russia and China, it's because, yes, those conditions enabled them to be victorious in ways that weren't possible here. But then it's our task to correctly interpret why that was so that it can be replicated here. We are not the passive result of our environment.
That's where the train of thought just, I can't follow you there, because it's like you're already looking for, you're like, oh, well, why didn't it work? We have to figure out how it will work. You're assuming, like, your analysis of the past is on the assumption that it can work in the future.
So why can't it work in the future?
Because
it applies to Marxism as a whole. Hold on, that whole thing applies to Marxism as a whole. Marx was assuming that socialism can work in the future. On what basis? Well, the whole point is to establish a scientific relationship to reality, including the reality you live to in the West, and just have that working relationship. You're not promising any future outcome. You're establishing a specific relationship between the organization, the party, and the class, the working class. Okay. Once you establish that relationship, that working relationship, everything proceeds from there. That's step one that Westerners can't do.
Okay. So I can ask. Let me ask you a question then. So, like, in a communist America led by patriotic socialists, all the ships, all the Navy ships, all the F-35s that are, malfunctioning.
I wish I could worry about that. I wish I could worry about I wish I could worry about what we're gonna do with our fucking military. When literally step one right now is just having a working class party that is based in the working class, that draws support from at least a significant minority of the working class. Like, that's just step one. What you're talking about is step 9,999. And by the time we get there, who fucking knows what anything? We don't even know what anything will be like.
By the time you get there, it's just going to stay the way it is, because then at that point, when you already
okay. So what you're saying is that you just want an excuse to sit on your couch and do nothing.
No.
Well, then how do you know it's going to be the same? You're inventing this copes to justify some ulterior motive to just sit on your couch and do nothing. How do you know it's going to be the same? You don't know that.
I'm not saying sit on the couch and do nothing, but I'm not saying also that it's possible to lead a communist movement in America that takes on the identity of being a patriotic socialist, and because you say as part of the patriotic socialist identity is you want
It's not an identity. It's not an identity.
There's an identity behind the patriotic.
No, there is not. That identity has been forced upon us because those people are different from us, and they are trying to identify us.
I'm not talking about the one that's forced upon you. I'm just talking about one.
There's no identity. It's not based on an identity.
Okay, sure. Maybe I didn't use the best choice of words there, but I was getting at something else. What I'm saying is, when you say you want to, bring America to a better future, right? Because you're connecting with working class Americans that are not all going to be watching Marxist-Leninist streams and reading theories. So you kind of have to meet the people where they're at when you're doing this, right?
The people do not give a fuck about ideology. They don't.
Yeah, they don't. In the terms of actually like being active and going to do something.
So you don't have to meet them in the middle ideologically at all. You just have to actually address their reality correctly in a way they understand.
The reality, yeah. I guess the issue is that if you're anti-imperialist and you're if you're essentially anti the established order, like the immediate short term, which you've acknowledged earlier, is going to be a rough ride. It's not going to be pretty. Like, it's just not. So, I mean, when you're leading a patriotic socialist movement and you want what's best for America, and you're dealing with people who don't give a fuck about ideology, so they're not thinking, oh, I read State and Revolution, I understand, that the future is coming, and like, it's not going to be like that. And you're selling them a reality that you're going to bind together.
Selling anything.
Better America.
Listen. If we fight for a better America, and as a result,
how do you?
Okay. Hold on. Okay, Trump's movement, has led to a considerable risk of the political situation in America deteriorating. Right?
I mean, Trump made me an ML, so
okay, and also the economic situation as a result. And people don't care because, yes, ideally, we do want a better society. We want to pursue that. But if as a result of that conflict, you're going to have, troubles and economic troubles, that's a side effect that is completely immaterial, okay? It has nothing to do with the motivations for why people are going to be loyal to the political movements that they do. They're not going to say, oh, well, we're not going to side with Trump because Trump is leading to instability. They'll say, I don't care about instability. I care about what's right and what's wrong. And Trump's right, and we want to fight. We're not going to let the enemy win. And in pursuit of fighting their enemy, they don't care what's going to happen. They don't care if it leads to an economic breakdown or it leads to some kind of political turmoil. And it's not because Trump has brainwashed them into an ideology.
No, it's because they've had.
It's because struggle itself and waging this struggle itself, this war itself, has already shifted or initiated them into being soldiers of a political war. If you're a soldier of a war, your primary concern is no longer about your immediate personal interests. It's about who's going to win this war. Your side or their side.
Earlier you were saying populism is just a matter of personal interest and no one thinks.
No, I was granting you your bizarre and arbitrary claim that populism is just individualism. And I said, okay, by that definition, all populism is individualist.
First, I got to interject there because I didn't say populism is individualist.
Yeah, you said the Tucker Carlson, you said American populism is individualistic.
I'm not saying every single person.
It doesn't matter. It's not material to the point. It's not material to the point. What you said was Tucker Carlson populism is individualistic. Okay. Well, I said, okay, then by that definition of individualism, all populism is individualistic.
No, why would I think that?
I said I think that.
You're saying you think all populism is individualism if you're going
by your definition.
By my definition.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
I wouldn't myself call it individualistic, but if you're going to define individualism that way, then sure, all populism is individualistic. But you haven't correctly described Tucker Carlson's populism as individualistic because Tucker Carlson supporters are not primarily concerned with making all the decisions that are going to lead to the most optimal individual outcome as far as economic stability is concerned. When they talk about
I think a
fighting
lot of
for,
them are.
okay, let me. I'm just going to like. I don't know if I have to do this Microsoft Paint or something. It's actually very simple right here, right? Okay, when you create a political movement around increasing everyone's wealth and having a better standard of living, okay, that can itself be the impetus for a contradiction with other political factions or political sides of the aisle, right? That can lead to a war, and it's the war that matters, and that's primary. Okay? So if you actually want to fight for a better standard of living or a better world, winning the war is the most important thing,
Okay.
not being consistent with the principle you have defined yourself on the basis of.
Okay, so
Because that political war is the basis of your political faction.
So let me see if I
So
have this.
if I want to fight for a better standard of living, I have to paradoxically engage in actions and decisions that will lead to a worse standard of living, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's a natural consequence of my position, my vision being
Right, so-
politically antagonistic.
Okay, so in America. The reality is that we have been inundated with anti-communist propaganda for decades.
It means nothing.
It means, so this is what I'm saying. Is what you're saying now essentially the fact that most Americans are anti-China?
I don't. It doesn't faze me. I'm just. I cannot respect American communists who are intimidated or impressed or overwhelmed by the ideological superfice. When you look at the meat and potatoes and actually try to understand what people really and essentially mean by these ideologies, you will not have this lack of confidence of being able to persuade people that your position is correct. Like, okay, well, everyone was it's so childish. Oh, people are saying mean and bad things about communism. It's almost like a child. This is what it's like. This is what it's like. I'll explain to you what it's like. It's like a child. It's like a child having a teddy bear that they project all of their feelings of goodness and warmth and kindness on, and then they see other people pissing and shitting on this teddy bear, and they just can't get over this superstition that these people are pissing and shitting on their sense of warmth and wholesomeness, when what those people have in mind when they're shitting on the teddy bear is that the teddy bear is an asshole and a murderer or something. And it's like, you can't get over that it's the teddy bear. You cannot get over that it's the teddy bear that's being incriminated here.
Is the teddy bear China?
Yeah, the teddy bear is the word China or communism or anything else. Just like,
but you're saying it's an emotional response, and I'm saying it's not an emotional response.
Because China and communism is your teddy bear. You're not focusing on what it actually means. You're just focusing on the superficial word and the superficial ideology instead of what it actually means in reality. You're just focusing on like the specific way you cope with reality through ideology instead of actually caring about what the ideology is supposed to really and essentially mean. Ideologies and words are supposed to make our reality more intelligible. So communist ideology is not... Hold on. Communist ideology is not supposed to be a fucking coping mechanism that we have this sensitive attitude toward. It's supposed to make our reality clearer and more intelligible than it otherwise would be. That's what scientific socialism is. So I could care less if Americans superficially harbor anti-communist views, because I know what they think of when they think of communism is not what I think of when I think of communism. It has a utility that they can be shown the utility, and it will completely change the meaning, right?
I feel like you're acting though as if you're in a vacuum with the American people post, Trump era, because there's going to be other competing forces and other coercive forces and other, it's not just
and the science of Marxism predicts that all of those forces will fail because they don't have a scientific relationship to their own material object. They don't have the scientific language to describe the actual historical and material forces that they are attempting to articulate in reference.
So what happens though? I mean, if you're leading a patriotic socialist movement, and let's say a different variety of patriotic socialists comes up that does adopt the anti-China line and does have a pro-imperialist
which
standpoint and
may
does
very well happen.
okay, yeah, and they do want to keep the military-industrial
Yeah,
complex, and they do say China is bad, and they want freedom,
it probably
individualistic.
will happen at this pace, honestly.
Yeah, it probably will happen.
AOC and
what I'm saying
the
is
DSA, that's probably what's going to happen.
yeah, and I think it could happen with the movement you essentially see yourself as a part of in the future.
I mean, the social democratic movement gave rise to fascism.
Yeah.
So what's your point?
Well, my point is that I think the reality is that the patriotic socialist movement is really part of that phenomenon that's occurring right now. Is that like it's adopting the aesthetics?
No,
of
because
being
even
American
even fascism is ultimately condemned to fail. It may temporarily acquire power, but ultimately it's condemned to fail. German communists were right when they said fascism would ultimately fail. It did ultimately fail. And the result was that in the eastern part of Germany, communists acquired power. I mean, fascism had one goal, which was to wage and win war, and it lost. It lost its wars. The Italians lost in Ethiopia, humiliatingly, and then they lost in World War II.
I mean, is that comparable to the American? Is that really comparable? I mean,
I don't see what your point is, because yes, is it possible that opportunistic forces will have an easy time hijacking communism or a communist movement because they have the power of the vested monetary interests who will fund them and these whatever that are going to fund them, of course. But we never said this wasn't going to be a war. It is. Communists have to remain steadfast in their position, hold the line, and keep fighting no matter what.
You know what? But Tucker Carlson is that. Then he is essentially the bastardization of populism, is he not? I mean, it's like
we don't know. I don't think he's a bastardization of populism. I think he is a spontaneous populist. He's not a scientific socialist. The danger isn't going to come from Tucker Carlson. The danger is going to come when the deep state, the Democrats, in other words, the people behind the Democrats at the very least, start getting behind this fake form of populism to use against China. That's what's going to be the issue. And that's why communists need to be very careful and very steadfast in keeping the pressure and keeping the heat on the deep state and the forces behind the Great Reset. As long as we direct popular anger against them, and as long as we wage war against the Democrats and the elites, they will not be able to accomplish this deception.
Okay, so you're saying you're agreeing that reality essentially is going to move forward, based on the current structure that exists, but that's not necessarily that's not really impeding your development of a patriotic socialist movement.
No, our slogan is the CPUSA 2036. By 2036, which is more than 10 years from now, our goal is pretty modest. We just want a reformed communist party that is a mass movement of millions of people. And that's what we want in more than 10 years. We're not saying we're going to be in power in 10 years. We're not saying we're going to be president in 10 years. We literally just want a workers' party movement by 2036.
But this is the thing. Do you want to... That clears things up. I mean, I definitely have a different view on it than but what do you mean by we're not going to become... Are you suggesting that one time, eventually you do want to have someone run for federal office? I mean...
Possibly. We'll see. What we want is a political platform.
Then you're kind of working... Are you not working...
We want our own corporation. We want our own corporation. We want our own way of generating money of billions and billions of dollars, potentially.
And you want to work
in order to have an independent political existence. We want our own corporate machine.
You want to participate in the House of Representatives and Congress and
sure, the federal government. Of course, nothing's off the table. Nothing is off the table.
I would say if you are successful, unless there's a drastic collapse of this country and the state's already smashed and destroyed, if you are successful in having someone attain the office of presidency, then you've already been compromised. Like, if you get through those doors,
again, you are thinking of everything in terms of end goals, and you're not thinking of things in terms of what the meaning of aspiring toward that end goal is for a struggle. So when you run a candidate, you're not necessarily expecting to win. You may win, who knows? You're open to whatever outcome.
is this pre-destruction of the U.S. state? You know what I'm saying? Like ultimately, as a communist, you would need to smash the American state before anything else. No, I mean,
No, you don't aspire to smash anything.
I don't mean
You
like
don't
Antifa
you
in the
don't
streets. I'm
aspire
talking
to
about
smash anything.
actually
You
dismantling
merely
it.
prepare yourself for a collapse, which is what communists have done, and
Okay.
or prepare yourself for a revolutionary circumstance,
Okay,
which
so-
are unlikely, but you still prepared for it to happen which is effectively the same thing as a collapse, right? So when the moment comes, you seize the moment. But beyond this, no, you don't smash anything per se. And
I mean,
it's a kind of like a fallacious.
Smash is a little bit of a
It's a fallacious way of reasoning, though. You're saying
I mean,
if
don't you need to you need to dismantle at some point the a huge sector of the economy needs to be just totally turned on its head, and like banking and I mean, because if you turn the reason why I focus on the military industrial complex so much is because every single other industry that exists in America is interwoven to it. If the military industrial complex fails, the entire system of America will fail. It's all connected. The banking's connected to military industrial complex, and the banking's you know what I mean. It's all one network of blood flow.
so, what exactly is your point?
I mean, I was just saying that I don't think I didn't really have a point in that sentence. I'm just responding to what you were saying, but yeah.
Responding to what?
I don't know. One of the things you said, bro, I forgot.
Okay, what I was trying to say is that running and aspiring to become president doesn't mean doesn't mean you're going to be president at all costs. So it doesn't mean, for example, that if it push came to shove, would you compromise with the establishment if you could be president? No, of course not.
No, you can't.
Okay, so aspiring to be president doesn't mean that it's about the end goal of being president as the ultimate ends. Okay, the ultimate ends is squarely defined by the institution of the Communist Party and not by the U.S. government. Okay,
yeah.
So the ultimate ends is securing the proletarian dictatorship, serving the people, being a tribune of the people that's serving the interests of the working class. That's the ultimate interest.
I don't see that as being possible. I think if you attempt to enact like this patriotic socialism movement on a large scale, then it's just
what do you mean on a large scale? Can you please explain what you mean on a large scale?
I don't think patriotic socialism existing on Twitch or YouTube is the same as the mass.
So how are you not a crab in a bucket? I am doing like what the most I can do as a human being, which is media, and you're a crab in a bucket bitching that I'm just on fucking Twitch right now and that I'm not king of the fucking universe. Like, what do you want from me?
I don't. That is not.
It's like I try to do one thing, one simple thing, and I'm held to the standard of being the universal God Emperor of the fucking universe, and you're complaining that I'm just on Twitch or I'm just on YouTube. Well, what do you want from me? You want me to just do nothing like you and sit on my couch? What actually do you want from me?
I just don't think you should be.
What should I be doing instead of doing this?
I mean, what you're doing is fine.
Okay, so why are you saying I don't think if it's on Twitch? Like, why are you being a crab in a bucket? Like, just saying something isn't possible before it even is able to happen. I mean, I'm just starting media. I've just started this, right? Like, this is a very fresh, nascent tendency that's emerged. Nothing has yet come of it, and it's like you're complaining that nothing has come of it. Okay. Well, you're saying nothing will ever come of it. How do you know? I mean, why are you saying that?
Well, I think because the history of America suggests that it's just not phenomenal.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
You can try it.
Before you've ever heard of me, okay. I'll ask you a question. before you've ever heard of who I was, ever,
Yeah,
right? Would you have
yeah,
been able to predict that infrared would come into existence?
definitely,
Really?
definitely. Yeah,
So
yeah.
you predicted infrared.
I was in the very beginning of Fred.
But you predicted that infrared was going to exist.
Yes, because my friends were also becoming ML.
So you predicted infrared and socialist patriotism.
I mean, the socialist patriotism, I feel like you focused on more recently.
Well, but that's something I'm specifically doing. I'm not like the other MLs. What we're talking about is what you came to debate about, right? So would you have been able to predict that a new tendency was going to emerge that they call patriotic socialism before it even came into being?
I think has it not already existed in history before this? Was there not a patriotic socialist movement in
Would
America?
you? Okay, the answer is obviously no. So you keep when this is what happens when there's a new thing that emerges and you keep talking about history, it's very clear you either don't have an adequate understanding of history or you're not able to anticipate events as they're unfolding in real time. For
Okay,
you to
yeah.
see,
I mean, you could be right. I will say that you could be right. So I
okay,
mean, you're not wrong in the sense
I'm
that
just
it is a
trying
new
to
phenomenon. I
understand.
can't say anything with 100%
So
certainty
what
because
is the
I'm not in
problem?
the
I'm
past.
just trying to understand the problem.
Um, I don't really have a problem. I just don't necessarily see it being successful long term. But I don't think that doesn't mean you can't try. I mean, you can try, and if you do well and everything stays on course, and you don't get co-opted, because
Yeah, but you're here
from
to
what I see,
debate socialist patriotism or whatever. So it's like what
yeah, I mean, I said what I had to say. I still think that imperialism harmed. The death of imperialism will harm the material reality of the American working class. Yeah,
okay,
especially
assuming
in the
hold on, hold
especially in
on. Okay, assuming that's
the
true. Assuming that's
right.
true.
Assuming that's true. Yeah.
Why is it relevant?
Well, because I think when you are in a declining country and you're leading a patriotic socialism movement, the logical step forward for an American who's been inundated with propaganda their entire life is to go towards a reactionary turn of China did it, or they will
That's
blame some.
already happening. And what we are telling them and what we're trying to say is that you cannot go back to the past and we want to build something instead of cope and say, "Oh, China's the problem. We just get rid of China." Because in
I think
actual
that's the reason
fact,
why
hold
you're
on,
not
because in
growing.
actual fact, we're correct. We're actually right. It's not just ideology, we're right, okay? The reason for America's decline isn't just because of China. It's not even because of China. It's because of America's own internal contradictions. And as patriots, we want to understand those contradictions and be worthy of them, okay? So I just don't
Okay.
see I just don't see what's like look what exactly are you saying? You say, okay, I think this will happen. What does that have to do with what we should do?
Uh, I mean, I don't want to like. I know you're. I'm just not a big. You talk about it all the time, but the use of the American flag a lot. It's like
So okay, let me ask you a question. Let's say we just ditch the American flag and use a red flag. What difference how does that help?
none. Probably not. Probably no difference.
Do
Like
you
in
think
terms
it
of,
it even makes it worse? Probably.
I would just say using the American flag probably makes your ability to grow your movement is probably worsened by using. Yeah,
Why?
because I think instead of tapping into people's actual self, when because the working class, a lot of working class people know
All
that,
right, what does the American flag represent to the working class?
I can't speak for the working class in that. Like, what I mean,
Okay, I
it's a
come from
very big.
Michigan and I hang around with these people and I grew up around them and stuff. So I'll tell
Yeah,
you what
I
it
mean,
represents for them.
I know
Okay,
what I okay. I know what that in that sense. Yeah, I know. I
okay,
know
it
how. I know
represents
how.
who it represents a part of who they are. Okay, it
Yeah,
represents their home.
yeah. It represents a part of who
It
they are.
represents their the place they grew up. It represents
Yes.
their parents, their family,
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
homeland. It represents their apple
Represents
pie and
freedom
everything
and
that makes them
democracy. Yeah.
American and different from others. That's what it represents. Okay.
Yeah, and freedom and democracy. TM.
What that's ideology. I'm talking about at a very
But it's
unconscious.
not just ideology because
Yes, it is, because what democracy do we have? None. Okay, so
None.
it
We don't
represents.
exactly. We don't have a democracy. We don't. That's why said it's freedom and democracy, TM.
So
But
without having to care about any ideals, the American flag represents to these people their way of life, who they are, their history, their culture, their parents, their family, whatever. Okay, their barbecues, whatever, their
yeah,
food, whatever.
yeah,
Okay,
and
their way of
and
life.
for a lot of
Okay,
working class people, it doesn't. But okay, I
the
agree that
what?
some for a lot of working class people, that's not the case. But for some, yes, it is.
For
But
the
I'm not gonna
for
create
the
this
American
abstract.
working class. Okay,
But
they're the
I'm not gonna
exceptions.
create this abstract, idea that the American working class loves and worships the American flag, and they all love the American flag. That's just not true. Like that's just not true. So it's like I see what
I
you're
first of
saying. I see
all,
what you're saying.
listen. You were taught from a young age to hate Plato, so you hate generalizations, right?
Well,
You hate
what? I thought
generalizations.
that he
You always
Plato.
you think it's
Was
somehow like
reading-
you're making a point by saying there's exceptions to the general trend, and it's not actually a point
No,
because it's you're not
I'm not
actually
making
talking
things-
about anything. You're not talking about anything, okay?
No, I am because I'm talking about the base of
Okay,
people from
what
which.
essential point are you making by saying not all working class people are fond of the American flag?
Because
What's the
what I'm saying is
essential?
that
Is there a symptomal,
yes, there
formal
is a reason I'm
relevance?
saying that. Yeah, because I'm not saying you're wrong for taking this route, but
Okay.
I don't think this is the viable route. I think this is the route I think the route that you're on
Can
is
you
the one
tell me
that
what significant portion of the working class takes issue with the American flag?
percentage wise, I have no idea.
No, what group? What specific form that's relevant? Because the working class is a form. You're saying there are exceptions within the form. Those exceptions do not assert themselves as having any significance until they themselves become a form. So, what specific form of the working class has a problem with the flag? Because if there's no independent form, then it literally means nothing that there's a small exceptions that have a problem with the flag. Nothing.
Wait, and what form are you talking about then? That
Okay, you are saying not all working class people are fond of the flag, right? But if as a
sure, I
general
don't know. It could be
trend,
most. It could
if
be
as a
most.
general trend, the form of the working class is fond of the flag, right? As a general feature of their
Is
form,
it?
such that if there are exceptions, they come at the expense of the identity of the working class as a form, okay? What is the point of saying there's exceptions?
I was saying that there's exceptions because you were talking about the working class in general, like it's some sort of monolithic.
Okay, again, please learn Plato instead of Reddit. Plato is about it's about forms, right? Generalizations. You hate generalizations and you think they're not relevant and that generalizations can have no currency because
No,
there's
not that they don't have it.
exceptions.
No, I don't think they can have no currency. I just think it's
Okay.
important to like recognize.
So let me explain to you Plato. Can I explain to you Plato? So
Sure.
from Plato, if there are exceptions to a generality, then those exceptions come at the expense of that specific form. Let me give you an example. If, for example, it is a general trend for, let's say, for goblins to love ass cheese, keep this up, right? Goblins love ass cheese. It is a general trend of goblinness, the form of being a goblin. They love to munch on ass cheese. You understand? If there are some goblins that do not like to munch on ass cheese, this is for a reason that comes at the expense of them being goblins. So, insofar as it is a feature of their goblins, they like to munch on ass cheese. If there are some goblins that don't like to munch on ass cheese, it is for reasons that are different and come at the expense of their goblinness. So that's Plato.
You're saying people who don't like or do not view the American flag favorably are like those goblins that don't eat
Yes,
ass cheese?
it's not. It has nothing to do with them being working class. It's for some exceptional reason.
Really?
That's
I don't think you can delineate it like that. I mean, even if it's for an exceptional reason, that reason is still tied to a reality that does objectively
Everything's
exist.
interrelated, okay? But
Yeah.
it is not a quality of working classness to oppose the American flag.
It's not a quality of working classes to oppose it. Is this what you're saying? Is in general, it's not a quality?
Yes, in general, working class people are fond of the flag. There are group exceptions like minorities, which is what I thought you were talking about. But you're talking about individual exceptions. Those are completely meaningless.
No, I don't. I mean, I was talking more broader.
If the exceptions are not groups, it is literally immaterial that there's exceptions.
Just by nature of...
Okay, Reddit teaches you to use this argument in a debate that when someone attributes features to a certain identity, they say, well, you're treating it like a monolith. Yeah, that's called Reddit thinking, okay? No one is saying every single person who's working class. When you attribute... generalities do not... Generalities do not mean...
I don't think I'm as lost as you think. You think I'm like more lost than you think I am.
Generalities do not deny exceptions. That's not... Generalities can still be real, even if there are exceptions to it.
Sure. Okay. So, but I'm saying the point of bringing up that not everyone worships the flag is because it was in context related to your patriotic socialism is going one direction, where I'm saying I see communism in America, a communist movement going the other direction, where it doesn't lean into that. And I'm saying there is absolutely potential within the working class to not identify. It doesn't really matter what they identify with, because I agree. I wouldn't have a fucking...
Where do you identify that potential to be against the flag and patriotism? Where are you seeing that potential of the working class becoming anti-patriotic?
I don't really see that in this country on a mass scale. That's why I don't. That's why I don't think a communist movement is really going to be successful outside of what just actually occurs within material reality. I think America... I don't want to sound like a doomer, but like I pretty much think America is not really like conscious at all. Like there's no actual like conscious or collective consciousness of
so
Americans.
What?
So I think you're operating with like
I don't need consciousness. I'm already conscious. Who do I care about others? I don't need people to already be conscious when the whole point is to struggle within the consciousness that exists. I don't need people to already be communists. That's what you're saying. In effect, what you're saying is that people are not ideologically disposed enough to my consciousness.
Well, I mean, you're going to be waving...
It's completely immaterial.
And identifying as a patriotic socialist, and so are the liberals in Trump's movement. So, I mean, I'm saying it's like you're not really distinguishing yourself as something unique and
really
different.
Because I'm pretty sure the last time I checked, I call myself a capital C communist. So I'm pretty sure I am distinguishing myself.
I never really understood. Like, I've watched your stream a shit ton. I've never really understood what you mean by capital C communist. I never really...
It literally is what it sounds like. A capital C unapologetic communist. It means we're not communists with nuance. We're not communists who are explaining, oh, but we were distancing ourselves from the USSR and real communism. We are capital C communists, and we are in good faith embracing all of the intuitive connotations people have of that. We just think that at the conscious level, they are misinterpreting the meaning of that.
But like, does this have something to do with like, like on another one of your streams, you spoke favorably of the U.S. Constitution. Like, why? Why you do that?
Because it's a nice, simple, clean constitution.
I mean, that to me, that's just you're leaning into liberalism because you're pulling people from a liberal movement, and they're going to stay liberal.
What do you mean liberal? First of all, what are you talking about liberal? Liberals don't give a shit about the Constitution.
Yes, they do.
No, they don't. Liberals literally keep talking about how, we want to rewrite and change our Constitution. Liberals don't give a shit about the Constitution.
No, I don't want to do anything with the Constitution. Shit's gonna crash and burn on its own. Like that's that should be the communist outlook. Like not oh, the Constitution is a document, and the American Revolution was a rebellion against the British Crown. I mean, the American Revolution was a revolution of an American bourgeois against the British bourgeois. So I mean, it's like
not. It wasn't just the bourgeois. It was the bourgeoisie alongside the yeomen and the small farmers and the people against the British as a whole. It wasn't just this bourgeoisie.
It wasn't led and financed and run by the bourgeoisie.
Yeah, but it also was in the material interests of all the other classes too.
But see, it's like to me, it seems like you're crafting.
There was nothing essentially bourgeois about it.
Really? I mean, don't you think the fact that it
it wasn't bourgeois in the sense of coming at the expense of the interests of the yeomen and the workers.
I mean,
it was bourgeois only in a historical sense. It wasn't bourgeois in the sense of.
I mean, I'm gonna say it. I know you're gonna react fucking horribly, but it did come at the expense of the native people who were here. So I mean, I just don't think
and what's your point?
My point is that the brutality that is involved in that historical reality is part of the current historical reality, and it's part of the Constitution materially. It is part because it is literally materially connected.
Go ahead. How is it that when
because the physical construction of the object known as the Constitution of the United States of America was only possible to be created the way in which it was created, which required every single atrocity that was committed before.
First of all, why did it essentially require that?
Identifies that. To me, the only reason you would speak faith, because I'm not sure you actually think that. Like, I don't know if you consciously think that the Constitution is some good, clean document, or if it's just you falling into what I was talking about earlier, which is you're a communist who has
you are all over the fucking place. Can we focus on one thing at a time?
All right.
How is it? First of all, even if it was true that from determinist historical reason, all the stars had to align for the Constitution to be produced in the way it was. What essentially about our Constitution entails the genocide of indigenous people? Go ahead.
When you say do you mean like the abstract ideas in the
just the word? It's just please use common sense. What necessarily about our Constitution must entail the genocide or repression of indigenous people?
I mean, the way in which the Constitution was set up is reflective.
That's the whole point. Even if that's true, even if I grant you that that's the way it was set up, why does that entail that it necessarily entails that now? Okay, so you need to understand. You don't understand logic. None of the issues you don't understand logic. I'll explain logic to you. The conditions of the necessity of a thing in the historical sense say nothing about what that thing necessitates in a contemporary sense.
So, I mean, could you apply this logic to the Confederate flag? Like, could you say that the Confederate flag for some people in the South doesn't mean the historical oppression?
What does the Confederate flag mean?
I mean, are you asking me or
Yeah, what does it mean? What is it? What is the Confederate flag? What is it the flag of?
I mean, are we going to talk on like a general basis? On
what is it the flag of?
The Confederacy.
Okay, and there you go. It's literally that simple.
But it's not that simple.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
It's the flag of the Confederate States of America. The Constitution is a working document that is part of our state that guarantees us certain liberties and rights. It's not just a fucking flag. It's not a symbol.
You think it actually guarantees certain liberties and rights?
It actually legitimately, yes, it does. Legitimately, yes, it fucking does.
Dude,
I literally went to law school only for 1 year, and already I can promise you.
Why does that matter?
Because the Constitution operationally literally does secure us rights. And they do try to find loopholes and circumvene it in the best way they can. But there are some things in our Constitution that are so clearly and unambiguously written that the government, corporations, and businesses literally cannot get away with certain shit because of what our Constitution guarantees to us.
But they do.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, why can't they throw me in jail right now? Okay, throw me in jail right now for this Twitch stream. Why wouldn't they want to? Wouldn't they want to?
No,
they can't.
No. Why would they want to do that? Why would they? No, they would love to just let you sit here, and if they don't think
they literally cannot do whatever they want. I have studied the history of Supreme Court cases in this country and court cases in this country. They can't just do whatever the fuck they want. Our Constitution does protect us.
But like at the end of the day, the working class gets fucked, and I'm in LA. There's homeless people all over.
Yeah, a big issue I'm hearing. I keep hearing this thing. I'm in LA. Where you live does not represent this country at all.
No,
I hope you know that.
You don't. I mean, I think it does. Yeah.
Okay. Well then, I'm from Michigan. I've lived in LA for 45 days, and your city is literally as far removed from regular America as 100%. Fucking Timbuktu. Okay. 100%. In no way does LA represent. It represents a part of America. But it doesn't represent America. Like, you don't have...
It represents a part of... Well, what I'm saying is that it represents a part of America that
it represents our fucking media, Hollywood. That's what fucking LA is, and nothing more.
Which exists all throughout America.
Yeah, but it's only a... The difference is, what LA represents is a tiny part of my Michigan, okay? It's a tiny part of my Michigan. Tiny, tiny part. Most of my Michigan has not... You don't find it in LA. You don't find my people in LA. You don't find their character in LA. You don't find the way of life here in LA. You don't find the industries here that you find in LA. You don't find that in LA. Okay?
No, but LA is it's like it's the actual location at which American consumerism is just fully unleashed and people are fully atomized.
No, it's not. That's not what makes LA significant at all.
And I mean the significance really is Hollywood.
The significance is aesthetics. That's what LA is.
And the movies and all that shit. But
yeah, it's aesthetics in general. That's LA's significance.
Fuck, what were we talking about right before?
What I'm trying to tell you, okay, is that...
Oh yeah, the Constitution.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't see what I'm saying when you say all these things about how it gives us rights, and I don't really care about the
you know what Miranda rights are? Do you know what Miranda rights are?
I couldn't read you like the Miranda rights, but I know.
Yeah, do you know what they are? They know what freedom it gives you.
Yeah,
it means you don't have to talk to cops when you get arrested,
right? Yeah,
you don't have to talk to them when you get arrested.
Right.
That directly comes from our Constitution. Directly.
But they'll beat the fuck out of you if they want. So, and that's what.
Then you can sue them. You can sue them.
Yeah, and then lose. Like, you think because some people sue and win that's generally what happens?
Even in a court overwhelmingly biased against you, violating the Miranda rights directly through beating you up is such like a one-sidedly illegal thing. They wouldn't be able to get away with it.
But see, this is my whole issue with patriotic socialism, because I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I definitely see what you're saying and all this stuff, but like now we're idealizing the U.S. Constitution. We are talking about how it grants us rights. We're talking about the American Revolution.
It's granted. Someone in my chat said it's expensive to sue someone. That's true. It is a business, but I'm just saying. Yeah.
So I'm saying the material reality of what you're saying is not...
The ability to sue in the first place and win is something our Constitution gives us.
That's a low bar, man.
Okay, well, what do you have against... Why are you trying to get rid of the few liberties that we do have?
I'm not trying to
So what's your problem with the fucking Constitution?
Stop,
What is the issue with the Constitution? What's the problem with it?
I don't even know how to answer. What is the problem with the U.S. Constitution?
Is there a problem with us having Miranda rights and free speech? And is there a problem with all that? What's the problem?
No, but it's like these things are not removed from from larger society itself.
Can you please be specific in what you talk about?
Yeah, how, like, in what I just said?
Just say things that are real and don't just throw meaningless, like, just
They're
say
not
something
meaningless.
real. Can you say something that
They're-
refers to reality
you
specifically, like that has
reverse
content?
reality. I'm what I'm saying is, all the liberties that you're saying that we don't have. That's pretty much my point. Like, you're saying, do you want to get rid of them? Do you
So
think
how will getting rid of our constitution give
but
us
there's
true
but
liberty?
you don't get rid of. But the thing is, you don't get rid of.
So
There's no
why
getting
are
rid
you
of it. It's
saying
involuntary.
so? But you're talking about the constitution right now, right?
Yeah, because you want to lead a communist movement, but you also want to idealize about the U.S. Constitution and
Why? Because I
Miranda
said it's
rights.
a simple and clean document that does
I mean,
guarantee a certain. Hey, guess
it
what?
doesn't.
Hey, guess what? Yeah. The
You keep saying it
Constitution.
guarantees its rights. It does not do that. It does not do that. It is a piece of paper. It is literally a piece of paper. That's it.
That is the most soy Rick and Morty Reddit shit I've ever heard in my fucking life.
That the Constitution's a piece of paper. It is materially. You there?
A throne is just a chair. That's all it is. It's just a chair. It doesn't represent anything else.
I don't
it has
mean
no
to
other meaning.
diminish
It's just a
its
chair.
but I'm not trying to diminish its historical significance.
Okay, that's
so
the
it's not
dumbest
really
shit
relevant.
I've ever heard. Okay, first of all,
not-
the Constitution provides communists a mandate upon which a war against the deep state and the ruling class is possible. Our deep state is entering into contradiction with our Constitution. They don't like how the Constitution gets in their way. The Constitution provides us a mandate. The spirit of the document, is itself a mandate with which communists can wage a war against our ruling class.
The spirit of that document is communist.
Is a mandate that will allow communists to wage war against the ruling class in this country.
I don't think this would the Constitution.
Well, then you're fucking wrong. Even Ron Paul knew this. Ron Paul knew that the shit they were doing was against our Constitution, and he was right.
What do you mean the shit they were doing?
Like the invasion of the wars and the fucking Fed and the printing of all of that shit. Nowhere in our Constitution is that allowed. Nowhere in our Constitution is the deep state allowed.
Exactly. Look at you. You're literally arguing the opposite point you were now. It's nowhere is it allowed in the Constitution, yet it still happens. That's my argument.
So the whole point is to uphold the Constitution against them. Holy fuck.
Yeah, so you want to co-opt a symbol that's already proven to be totally fucking fake and a PR tool for Barack Obama and George Bush and Trump and Hillary to just wave around the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution. It's like that's what you're talking about as giving us rights in a country that literally fucking murders people around the world.
Okay, I'm gonna translate what you said. I'm gonna translate what you said into meat and potatoes. So when I talk to intellectuals like you raise some contrived, convoluted fucking point about how the Constitution is already proven its farceness by being existing alongside the very things that contradict it. But when I talk to an ordinary working class fucking guy and I'm just like, yo, let's stand by our Constitution and fight the deep state and fight the ruling class and fight Bill Gates, they're like, hell yeah, brother, I'm on board with it. It's like, this shit works when you talk to ordinary people, but when I talk to you, you raise all of these needless, pointless intellectual convolutions that have nothing to do with the fucking point at hand.
I mean,
it's like, what is the point? You're saying, well, the Constitution has already proven that it's bullshit because why? Because it wasn't able to prevent the deep state? All that proves is that the Constitution all on its own isn't enough. That's the significance of the Communist Party. The Communist Party needs to be the one to defend and uphold the Constitution against them. And what's the fucking problem? I mean, what you're saying is so stupid. It's like saying, that's like saying China is evil, and here's why China is evil, because Why, Mao, are you trying to unite China? China itself is what made possible the breaking up of China and the century of humiliation. So how could you stand by Chinese patriotism and uphold China when that very thing is what allowed China to? It's like such a stupid fucking point.
No, I mean, you're totally wrong there, because China is not America, and China does not run on imperialism like America does.
No, okay,
so,
you know what?
Yeah, it is.
No. I am going to lock you down logically. I did go to law school for a year, and what you're saying is so infuriatingly fucking out of the ballpark. Logically speaking, you just made a logical comparison. You just said, you made a logical point. How can you set the Constitution against the deep state when the Constitution itself, despite not allowing the deep state, exists alongside the deep state, proving its insufficiency? Logically speaking, you can say the exact same fucking thing about China in regards to its century of humiliation. Why would you uphold China and try talking about saving China when China itself, despite its essence being against imperialism, the spirit of Chinese civilization contradicting British imperialism, how could that itself allow for, how could Mao talk positively about China when China itself is what led to the Qing dynasty and the century of humiliation? It's literally one for one the exact logical form. And when I present to you this fucking fallacy of thinking, you come to me and you say, well, China's different because it's not imperialist. What does that have to do with what you said about the Constitution? Nothing.
I mean, in general, if you're talking about like civilization to civilization, and you're trying to say since China, has a troubled history.
I'm not talking about civilization to civilization. I'm using an example to demonstrate how your point about how just because a thing exists alongside a thing that contradicts it doesn't mean that thing is already condemned or ruined or proven its inadequacy. Or it's like, why are you talking about civilization? Why?
Where in the Constitution does it say there's no deep state?
Okay, so now you're backtracking and saying, because that argument failed, you have a new argument, which is that
I think that is part of your
because the Constitution sets very clear parameters of what our government is supposed to be, and a deep state just is acting as a shadow government that is nowhere sanctioned within the Constitution. The parameters of our government are within the Constitution. The deep state is not within the Constitution. It's literally that simple.
But since the deep state isn't mentioned in the Constitution or discussed, then it
has no legitimacy.
So what makes the Constitution so legitimate?
It is the founding document of the American state.
But I mean, in terms of being a cornerstone of a communist movement, because it sounds like that's like what. Because if patriotic socialism was initially more like earlier in the call, I see what you're saying. Now I just don't. I don't see the reasoning or the. To me, it's like a failure in recognizing that the Constitution is inseparable from the society that existed back then, which then led to today. And I know this is kind of what you've been saying. Where
Thank you, Subbased.
You've been
saying,
okay,
so what? Thank you, Subbased. What you are trying to say is that there's no contradictions. Everything is the way it is because it had to be, and it's an essential feature of the thing. The only thing is. This is where your lack of education and philosophy comes in, okay? What you're saying is technically true. All that is real is rational, as Hegel put it, right?
Yeah.
But how do you know what's real or not? How do you know, for example, that the way the world is now is essentially real rather than, for example, undergoing a process of conflict, contradiction, antagonism, and destruction? How you're saying, okay, well, you're trying to set in a populist way the Constitution against the deep state. Well, the Constitution itself is what led to the deep state. So how can you separate the two? Okay, how do you know the deep state is our final form, though? Why can't I say the communist movement is our final form? Why is it the deep state is our final form?
How, in what way, and how could the deep state be your final form? What do you mean by that? Like your final
You're
form?
saying the deep state is the ultimate culmination of the Constitution.
I don't know about the ultimate culmination.
Okay, well then you're not saying anything then, because I'm saying the Communist Party is the ultimate culmination. You're saying the deep state's the ultimate culmination.
The deep state is the culmination of the aspiration of Western individual rights. The fetishization of Western individual rights is what leads to the deep state being able to.
Is that a scientific statement? What you just said?
No, I wouldn't say so.
Why would you say that?
Did I commit a sin or something? What's wrong?
You committed something worse than a sin, because sins are often some of the biggest sins are made with intelligence. What you just said was just thoughtless.
How is it thoughtless?
You said the deep state is the culmination of the Western idea of individuals.
Yes, it's like the deep state is like to me, it's like the deep state is when you are when you have leftists that are anarchists, essentially, is what enables the deep state. Yeah, like the deep state is not inseparable from the individualism that is observable within American society. It's like the fact that we live in such an...
How is American individualism essentially the deep state?
Well, it's that they're both reflective of the same thing. Like
even if that was true, what about the essence?
Responsible for the deep state, but the reality that created the deep state functions and is premised on Western individuals, which is tied into the Constitution.
Thank you, Jackson.
Which is part of.
Okay, everything is interrelated. The sun and the moon and the stars and my own shining ass. What is your point?
In America, a lot is.
What is the essence? What is the essence? What is the essence? What's your point?
Patriotic socialism would be.
Just by pointing out things are related or share an origin or share a reality does not tell us whether they are essentially related or whether they essentially share a reality.
Because the ideals you are exposing is what would show me the direction in which your movement is headed. Like if you want to grow, for instance, like you complaining on the streets, like why my viewer count is 400. Maybe you'd get more viewers if you just, like maybe that's the reason why, is because it's not really attainable by pushing that sort of like.
So why okay? So why was I at 600 and rising in the fall?
I mean, LA had a big part of it, but
Oh, was it LA or was it because of this grand general problem of my whole ideology? I hate this stupid soy shit so fucking much. I'm about to say so many slurs. I gotta stop myself. I can't fucking believe what you're fucking saying. You're sitting here and telling me, this is like when people say, when the USSR is about to collapse, oh, this is because the whole ideology of Marxism is flawed. Really? You decided it's flawed at this specific moment when there are these specific particular reasons for why it's happening? Shut the literal fuck up. You literally represent laziness, idleness, giving up. You represent the most pussy fucking mentality I can fucking think of, where when one thing goes wrong, instead of focusing on I'm just gonna give up as a whole. This whole thing is fucking fruitless. I've gotten as far as I fucking have. I went from 600 average to 400 or 500 average now as of the past 2 weeks, and now you're saying, well, what if this incriminates the entire theoretical project you're doing? You are a fucking parasite. You're a crab in the fucking bucket. The minute I go down by 5 viewers, you want to latch on and spread this whole fucking narrative about why the whole thing is bullshit? You haven't been here to build anything up. All you do is give explanations for why shit falls. You never know the meat and potatoes and the spark and the creative fire that gives rise to something. You don't have the creative fire in your fucking stomach to build anything creatively. So you sit here and nibble on every small fucking failure someone does and try to explain it. Oh, the reason this guy lost the fight, was this grand. You don't know shit about why someone. Hey, shut the fuck up. Don't pretend and sit here like you know why someone would lose a fucking fight when you've never even been in the fucking ring.
I wasn't even saying you lost the fight. I wasn't even like.
Don't fucking sit here and try to fucking give these explanations for Haz is down 100 or 200 viewers tonight. It can't be because he streamed late. It can't be because he streamed later than usual. It's the whole. It has to be something that can literally not explain.
When you asked me, didn't I say LA? Isn't that what I said?
Yeah, which contradicts with this thing you said. Maybe you were talking about how you have 4. Why are you talking about my views? Nobody even mentioned my fucking views. We were talking about your views. Maybe that says this whole thing you're doing is not viable. So I should give up and be like you.
You're right in that I'm wrong about that. You're right in that I was wrong about that. I don't know why you get so fucking.
Because so many people do it and it's fucking infuriating. Because all these people think that really? All these people think that
it's like why you're like on it. I mean, I know this shit probably is on your mind a lot, which I
yeah. So the minute I go down 100 viewers, all these fucking lazy losers who have never built anything in their whole fucking life can try to create a narrative and try to create a monopoly of trying to explain why it's happening as if they know anything about streaming or know anything about what I'm fucking doing here in the first place.
I sympathize. I understand that. I didn't really mean it in like a super pejorative sense, or like I really was not trying to make a bigger point, but yeah, I mean, I was just what I was really saying is that I just don't see I just don't see the reality you do, really. But that's also, I'm not coming at this from the perspective like you think I'm coming from the box that you've constructed of that. You think I'm like a parasite, and I think I'm criticizing your effort to build. I'm not doing any of that. What I'm saying is I just don't see the vision you see, and that's what I'm debating about. But I'm not trying to include.
So debate about it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. I did not mean to.
Okay, just get to the debate part.
Yeah, I got you. Well, you were talking about the Constitution and shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why don't you, instead of harnessing patriotic socialism outside of the Constitution, is it only
thank you Subbase, appreciate you. Go ahead.
Is it only something to relate to the Americans that are like, is that the angle that you come at it with? It's like that's where the popular consciousness exists, is within the American sphere, so that using the American flag is what's going to lead people into the communist.
Can you repeat your question?
What I'm saying is, are you appealing the patriotic socialist movement? Is it appealing with are the reasons you're using the Constitution actually because you think it's a good document, or do you think it's good to use that idea as a way to relate to common working people?
Do you actually love your mother, or is it just because she's your mother?
I love my mother for everything she's done for me, which is because she's my mother. So I love my mother.
So it's the same exact thing. It's literally the same exact thing. You are making it seem like, I've found a contradiction. If you were to begin from a blank slate, you, Haas, would not probably have made the Constitution as it exists. You probably would have made something else. But this notion of reality is wrong in the first place. Reality is not something we make from a blank slate. It's something we inherit from something we don't individually create. So Constitution means I have to humble myself to realities I am not in control of.
Okay, so then what prevents you from leading, like, if you're using all this American iconography, do you think this doesn't turn into a predominant? And I'm not trying to like, invoke like an accusation of racism, but it's like, don't you think that would primarily lead to just like a vastly majority white party in America? Or do you think that?
It would be a majority white insofar as our country is majority white.
But you don't think it would be like it would adopt a white identity?
No. Why? When you say things like white identity, you're saying all of the black, Latino, Mexican, whatever people in this movement, they should have a problem. Why? Why bring up race?
I mean, it's not really necessarily about quote unquote bringing it up. It's just the fact that in our liberal
Our
society,
communist movement would be significant. Look, my channel is already significantly less white than the DSA.
yeah, of course, yeah, I believe that is.
So what is your point? Probably
Well,
there may even not be a white majority. Maybe it'll be majority Mexico and Latino, and maybe they will be the vanguard. Maybe black will be the vanguard. Who knows?
Yeah,
It doesn't matter.
yeah. I mean, I believe that that's the vision. I just don't know if
It
that's.
just has to be something that isn't going to exclude anyone and
Yeah.
is going to be able to win the majority.
But do you not think that like using the American flag is going to exclude some people?
No, because there's nothing inherently white about the American flag.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I have a different opinion on it.
Why is the American flag inherently white?
It's not that the American flag itself is inherently white, but that the basis of people, the American people, the history of the worship and admiration of the American flag is tied into um, the establishment. Really, it really is the establishment. When you're at a sporting event or whatever, and they play the national anthem before the game, like to me, I'm witnessing like a fucking satanic ritual. Like when I'm at a game
I'm not. I'm not witnessing a
when they
satanic.
lower the American, when they
I'm
lower the
witnessing
American.
ordinary people engaging in a sporting event, and
How can you
I don't think there's
separate,
anything wrong with that.
how can you separate that event and that admiration away from the
I'm not trying to, because
instilled
I'm not
in there?
trying to create a punk rock movement of rejects and losers and exiles. I'm trying to help kickstart a movement for normal people. People who do go to the fucking football game and listen to the anthem with their family and have normal lives. I'm not here to fucking make a movement for freaks and punk rock freaks.
But you'll go to the event. You'll worship. You'll stand up and honor the American flag, and then you're gonna say that China is actually good, right?
Why
Like
not?
that's right. Because I'm saying those events as they exist today are part of.
So you're saying there is something about going to a sporting event and listening to the flag, the anthem, that is essentially anti-China.
Yes, I mean yes.
What?
Absolutely.
How? Please explain.
Because materially, the jets that fly overhead are part of the U.S. military's apparatus, physical apparatus, and it's being worshipped.
So you're talking about the jets now, not the anthem, but specifically
the
the
anthem,
jets.
the jets, it's all tied together. They're not separable phenomena. Why?
Okay.
How can you separate these phenomena? You can't really separate.
Well, I'll tell you what the feelings and intentions of the people at those events is not to worship the military.
Yeah, but that's just what exists in their head. I don't really care what exists in their head like that.
Okay. Well, what I'm trying to tell you is that you can rally the majority of people against the deep state and the people who control our military without And that can be perfectly compatible with the same thing that attracts people to want to enjoy sporting events and listen to the anthem before the game starts.
But it's just like, don't you want communists to actively recognize the American state in its current form as an enemy of them and people abroad? I mean, like,
What do
is
you
that
mean by the American state?
the deep state? I would say
Okay.
the American state
The deep state.
really
Okay.
is the deep state. I mean, the deep state really is the American
People
state.
don't like the deep state. People like their country.
But
They like,
when they don't like the deep state, like
and yet they use
it's
iPhones
like
that were made in
it's like they want a
in
lot of people don't want a deep state because they want a different state.
No, they don't want the deep state at all. They don't want the
Really,
deep
because I
state.
think a lot of people wouldn't give a fuck if we wage war as long as the deep state like stopped doing shit publicly or censoring people on Twitter and
Which is not possible.
what's not possible.
What you just said. It's not possible for us to wage war and at the same time maintain the democratic civil liberties at home. It's not possible. It's never been possible. I mean, Lenin talked about that. Lenin talked about how imperialism came at the expense of democracy and came at the expense of the ability to just maintain simple civil liberties. They talked about this in their theorization of fascism. Fascism was the culmination of imperialism for a reason. It's what Justin Trudeau is doing right now against the truckers with his emergency powers. Where's the democracy in this? That is 100% essentially tied to Canada's involvement in American imperialism. Is Justin Trudeau using those emergency powers at home to curtail the civil liberties of the Canadian people? Yes. It's the same power that lets them wage wars around the whole fucking world.
All right, now I have a question then, related kind of the trucker protests. If these events start happening in other countries, do you think it's communist job? It's like our job from America to vocally support these movements happening in other countries being, done in
What
public.
do you mean? We can just have solidarity with them. Just like we do with the Canadians. Are you saying,
Yeah,
should we intervene? No.
well, I mean, what if these events, even if the original trucker protest was organic and true, how do you know that these events, when they spread into other countries, aren't co-opted by essentially deep state money? How do you know the trucker protest right now isn't compromised by deep state money?
How do you know I'm not compromised by deep state money?
I mean, I guess theoretically it's impossible to know, but
So what is the point of the question?
I mean, I guess there wasn't really a specific point I was making in your perspective. But yeah, do you have any other questions for me? I mean,
Nope.
all right. I mean, shit. I think I got a better understanding of what you're saying, but I just don't see how can you view yourself as like an individual actor, like outside of the reality you live within, when you endorse like the virtuousness of the American flag, like you, right? I mean,
What do you mean, the
like you're
virtuousness of the American flag?
right. I mean, when you use the American flag as synonymous with or compatible with communism, aren't you essentially kind of saying that the American flag is
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what using the American flag means, okay?
Yeah.
So the American flag represents something for the American people. So when we use that flag, what we're doing is we are recognizing them in a specific way. We're saying, we know what this means to you, and we understand that, and we recognize that, and we also represent that. We represent you.
Do you? I mean, do you represent like do you, I mean, I don't think the communist vision really represents a majority of what Americans want.
Okay, then
I don't
get
think
the fuck
Americans
out of
want
this country then. Just leave. I'm sick of people who want to live here so badly and just say, what's the point of living here? Tell me why you even live here then.
why do
What
I
is, I
live
don't,
here?
you just enjoy this defeatist position so much. Either stop
I
being a
mean, I'm not
communist or
defeatist.
leave.
I'm not defeatist, but
Why do you love this idea that everyone's bad and you're good?
I don't think I'm good necessarily. I don't think I'm good. I don't think I have the answers, but I just
I don't
don't see
understand what the fucking point is. Why even be here?
why even be in America. I mean, I was
Yeah.
born here. I was born here.
So, do you think that if someone who lives in China or Russia or any other country in the world can have the same attitude as you and just say, "Oh, I just personally think everyone here is a lost cause, and I just want to sit around and be a bum and complain and be pessimistic, and I'm just gonna sit around and be a bum, and that's it." You think they tolerate that any other country in the world? You know what our fucking problem here in America? We have too many bums in this fucking country. That's our problem. We tolerate this bum mentality far too much in this country.
I mean,
That's the
if there's
problem.
a bum mentality here, it's just indicative of liberalism at
No,
large.
it's indicative of the fact that people think this country's somehow exceptional, where you can just be a bum and you don't have to actually fight for your country and your people, and you can just be in this position where you can be like Hassan with a $3 million mansion and a Porsche and just bitch and complain about the hogs and all this kind of shit
Yeah,
and
really fucking
anti-work
gross.
subreddit. And that's the real problem with this fucking country, honestly, is that
Yeah,
too many people are comfortable being asleep and not showering and all this fucking bullshit, and that's really what the problem with this country is. And I think it's high time that communists
you're like putting
don't
blame on the
tolerate
individual.
this.
Now you're putting blames on the individuals because you're looking at it
No,
from
I'm putting
someone
the
who,
blame on how communists tolerate this defeatist bum mentality on their own ranks, when we should be the last people to enable this fucking attitude and shit. What we should be saying
I
to
mean,
people who
collapse is
say,
coming. So the collapse is coming. So you want to be opportunist.
okay, look, if you don't believe in the if you don't
Not
believe
opportunist.
look, if you
You
do
want to be
not believe in the American people, you should not have a public presence. You can just privately believe in whatever the fuck you want. Don't come in public and start saying shit, because you're just gonna be objectively siding with the status quo and nothing more. Now, I'm not saying you have to be a communist and you have to believe in the American people. I'm just saying, if you're gonna have a public presence and call yourself a communist in this country, you better be fucking about that. Otherwise, just
I mean,
privately
I
anticipate
believe
whatever
in the
you
people.
anticipate.
I'll believe in the people, but I don't believe in the people winning through electoral politics in any. The only way in which I could see a communist party engaging in electoral politics if they are so strictly principled and that they do not kowtow a drop to either party and essentially operate within their own corner. But I don't know. Is like patriotic. So like, what does patriotic socialism entail? Like smashing the Democrat and Republican Party, and then having one
It
party. Like
entails a third
like
party.
what is, it's a third. And does it coexist? Like, do you guys see yourself coexisting with Republican and Democrats, or is that just like not really knowable?
What do you mean coexisting?
Well, I mean, if you're gonna like be successful as a patriotic socialist with like an electoral platform, then like where are the Republican and Democrats?
They are political opponents. They're rival parties.
They're gonna crush the fuck out of us. Like,
Then literally just sit on your couch and
but it's because like you take
eat your
away
potato
the
chips on your
American
couch.
people who agree
Just
with
sit
it.
on your couch, eat potato chips, and get high. What do you want me to say?
I
I don't.
I mean, I think you
Can
should
you?
be more I think you should be more. I think you should draw a larger distinction between you and the establishment than using the same or adopting an aesthetic that this
All right.
patron.
I'll create a populism that's based on punk rock music and no gods and no masters.
No, that sounds dumb. Why does it have to be that?
So what should it be? What's your anti-establishment American flag?
Just Marxist Leninist communist.
Oh, like so we should wave just red flags.
You don't have to be like. I mean, you can wave a communist flag.
Okay. And how is that different from LARP? What is it?
How
Okay, what does that flag mean to people? What does that mean to people? What does it actually mean?
That flag has
Because what the American flag means, what the American flag would mean in a populist context.
on its actual
What
meaning.
okay? What an
It
American flag?
has historical meaning.
What an American flag means in a populist context is we represent the real people and the establishment doesn't, right? So that's what that means. And they already know what the American flag is.
Really,
So,
I feel like the American flag for a lot of people just represents like the military, like it's just straight up the military. I think that's like majority of Americans when they think of America and the American flag, they just invokes imagery of the military. Is that not? You don't think that's true?
and why shouldn't we want to win people from the military? How did
It's
Eddie?
like, don't you think you're taking the approach where you're like going to adopt these people in, and then you're going to change their minds?
We want military. We have supporters in the military.
Is that
We
what
want
is
supporters
that?
in the military. We want a lot of supporters in the military. That's what we want. We want soldiers to be on our side.
Who was in the military? They would just quit. They would have to quit the. How could they hold your views?
Oh, why? So they can just sit on their fucking ass like a bum and benefit from imperialism like you? You think a soldier is more guilty than you are? Why? Because the soldier's not a hypocrite and they're actually you're better than a soldier? Why would they have to quit?
A soldier is not a hypocrite. I mean, I don't know what you mean by a soldier is not a hypocrite.
Why should they have to quit the military?
You don't have to make a
why should they have to quit? Why? Well,
I mean, it's going to be hard to hold positions like I hope I want the Chinese state to defeat the American empire and then also serve in the American military and get deployed to Taiwan.
Okay,
like,
how do you do that? It's do you know who brought the Bolsheviks to power?
No.
The military, the soldiers. That's what Lenin said. Do you know what war Lenin opposed?
But
the war with Germany, he opposed it.
Okay.
Who made the stopping of that war possible?
None of these were the American military. I mean,
you're right. It wasn't the American military because I'm talking about Russia right now. Yeah, it was the Russian soldiers.
Yeah. Okay.
Made it possible to stop fighting. So if you have a problem with war against China, you're going to want soldiers to be your allies because they're the only ones who can stop that fucking war if it came to that point.
I don't think soldiers would be capable in America of stopping a war themselves.
So who would?
They're put under like rigorous.
Yeah, what could stop a war then? What could stop a fucking war?
Like, how could communists in America stop a war?
How could anyone or any force stop a war unless soldiers no longer become willing to fight?
China could beat the fuck out of the American military, I guess is the only way.
Okay. So does it hurt for China to have allies in the military?
I mean, I would assume the United States of America would fucking kill those people if they found out, but I mean, it would help China. Like you're saying, it would help if they have like supporters in the military that support their country, or do you mean like spies?
Can you please tell me what you are saying?
Uh, I don't remember honestly. Too many points. We went talked about like 5 things in the last 3 minutes.
Are you high?
No, not right now. I'm just tired. But I mean, my larger point still stands that you're like engaging in the free marketplace of ideas. Like you're gonna have soldiers in the U.S. military that idealistically agree with you, but they're gonna be in the United States military, and they've already been through like rigorous indoctrination programs. So I don't know how you're gonna have huge numbers, but you're relating this to past historical events in China. I mean, in Russia and the USSR at the time, but I don't. I don't see how are you suggesting that American soldiers would actually help stop a war or a deployment to Taiwan? How does that actually how do American individual soldiers with their ideological convictions stop a huge real apparatus?
By not fighting.
So I mean you gotta have win a majority of the military.
Well, that's what you try to do.
I just don't think that's possible in the United States. I mean, I
Okay,
believe
but
in
it,
the American people. I believe in
but
collapse
it's
has
still good to have supporters in the fucking military.
it's like how do you get those supporters though? Like
The same, what do you mean? The same way you get any other supporters. You think it's impossible to convince soldiers to
I
be
think
against
it's
imperialism?
impossible to convince. I think it is
Okay,
impossible to
where did
be
most of the
substantial.
donations for Ron Paul come from?
Ron Paul's not a
Yeah.
communist. He says anti-imperialist
Yeah,
things.
that's all that matters here. So where was a huge portion of Ron Paul's support coming from?
I'm assuming it's the military, right?
Okay, back in 2016, where was the most amount of donations coming from for Bernie Sanders, who was also against the wars at that time?
Is it the military?
It was. So the
It's not really.
military seems to
Bernie's
be
not really a
thank you, Atari. The military is inherently disposed to populism. It always has been. Because they see on the ground the difference between what they're ordered to do and what actually happens. They see on the
Yeah, so you're
ground the
saying that
lies and the
once
and they
they end
don't
up
buy
killing,
into the bullshit of the establishment because they're the ones on
once
the
they end up
ground
seeing
dealing
the
with
fucking,
reality.
once they see the horror. So you're talking about soldiers who have seen the fucking horror of what
No, no, even
the
if they've never seen a day of combat, people in the military can see the operational difference between what the establishment tells the public and how shit actually works, which
inside
makes
the
them
military.
cynical toward the establishment and more disposed to populism.
I don't. Bernie, do you think Bernie was really an anti-imperialist force on
In
the campaign?
2016, he was signaling against war. Yeah, he was.
But he didn't mention the CIA. He doesn't talk about disbanding the CIA or any no real threats. Just ended up being totally milquetoast. So it's like, and that's a long shot. That's a lot different.
He doesn't talk
Right?
about
That's
he doesn't talk about giving me head either.
okay. And
I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm not, you're not
That's
sure
the
what.
point. I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure what you're trying to get at.
Like, you're not sure what I'm trying to get at.
No, I'm not. Because the whole point was that the military can support. So you're saying what? If he was against the CIA, then he wouldn't have gotten the support he did from the military? Well, Ron Paul was against the CIA, and a bunch of people from the military still supported Ron Paul. So what is your point?
Ron Paul is also pro-establishment in many ways.
No, he's not. He's against the Fed, he's against the banks, the corporations, and the
But at the end of
wars.
the day, he's a liberal who believes in running as a Republican ticket, and he believes in getting enough Republicans into the Senate and into the House of Representatives where we're going to vote in against anti-imperialism. Right? Ron Paul's just a liberal. I don't because it's like he can say those things idealistically. America's bad. We should end the Fed. The military-industrial complex is evil, but then you also believe
all you're
the
doing
material structure established by those entities,
all
which is
you are doing is critiquing Ron Paul from a strategic perspective. You are saying nothing else. You're saying his strategy doesn't work.
Paul operates reflects the fact that at the end of the day he's still liberal and nothing.
Everyone, if Ron Paul is a liberal to you, everyone's a liberal.
Ron Paul is absolutely a liberal. Yeah, believes in the American system. Believes in the American.
But if you ask most Americans, they're not going to say he's a liberal.
No, because Americans don't understand what liberalism really.
Because you're smarter than everyone. Words have no meaning. Only you give them meaning.
Smarter. It's that material reality happened to lead me to this conclusion, not under my own will. I arrived at my Marxist-Leninist position not because I'm smarter than anyone else or I figured it out or I have a big brain. It literally happened involuntarily. I became a Marxist-Leninist involuntarily. It was not my decision. So I don't think that.
Can we get to the point?
The point is that like the fact that you don't recognize Ron Paul as a liberal, and I'm saying he is a liberal because the way in which he engages with the reality.
Okay, but to most people, including those soldiers, he was different from liberals.
Say that again.
To the soldiers who are relevant in question, he was different to liberals. He represented anti-war, anti-establishment, anti-CIA views. That's what he represented to them. If his strategy doesn't ultimately realize that, that is immaterial to the fucking point at hand.
Why is it immaterial? His strategy
because it doesn't say anything about what he represents to the soldiers and why they supported him. They didn't support him because he had a failed strategy. They supported him because they liked the shit he was saying.
But so what's your point there though? Like
my point is that back to the original fucking point, in no way does the indoctrination or whatever the fuck you're talking about of soldiers in the military make them non-disposed to populistic and anti-war views.
Okay, yeah, I think I would agree with that.
Well, that's what we were arguing about.
It's possible on a mass scale in a way that would actually affect any.
60% of veterans are against war with Russia. That sounds like a mass scale to me.
I wonder what the numbers are for like people currently.
You're not going to get accurate numbers because those are institutionalized. They're not going to tell you what they really think.
It is true that like I do know I have met veterans that are fervently anti-war, but what I see is like all this anti-war fervor still, regardless of whether those soldiers are, when if they see Ron Paul as a liberal, like, or if they just like the ideas that he. How does that lead to change? Like, how does that lead to change electorally? Like, because you say political will.
You are the one who said that most Americans think of the military when they think of the flag.
think the essence behind it, yeah.
Okay, well, that's why we went down this dialogue tree of soldiers.
Soldiers could definitely be open to being communist, but I would still say a majority of soldiers are not going to be in the image of a communist. Like they're going to be reflecting the reality that veterans maybe, because especially veterans who saw combat, I would definitely, but I don't disagree with the strategy of appealing to forces, soldiers that are in the military, but it's like, what are you trying? You're trying to build like a mass movement of Americans that is premised on all the idealization of all the same symbols, same cultural icons, same attitude towards the founding of the country, and then it's just going to be communist or socialist. Like it's like each thing like indicates like that it doesn't really feel anti. Like to me, the American flag is just pro establishment. I mean, I know it's my own perspective, and I see how someone could see it as anti-establishment. They
All right,
choose
I'm
to,
gonna
but
explain to you the problem you're having right now is that you're a guy who just reacts to things after they happen and doesn't understand how things actually work. So listen, after let's say there is a communist movement and it's a patriotic movement, whatever, you're gonna sit here in VC with someone for like 4 hours. You're gonna be like, "Well, I get how that is, and I don't understand how this." And you're gonna take for granted that movement having already come to be without knowing anything about how it happened, because all you like to do is talk about things that are within your reach. Because you ultimately have the ideology of a couch potato. You just want the remote and the potato chips and the controller to all be in your reach while you sit on the couch. And that is your entire ideology. It's
I
literally
didn't
the
think
it's literally the ideology of a
that.
couch potato. That's your whole fucking shtick here.
I just think it's ridiculous to like frame it like that, because it's like you're you're like so bought into that that opposing viewpoints is like just being a couch potato. It just like feels ridiculous, doesn't it?
No, it feels very accurate. It feels very, very accurate, actually. I really feel this is on the nail. I don't understand what you are even trying to say. Even after this whole time, I don't even know
Well,
what
we've said
you're
a lot of
actually
different things.
trying to say. I don't know what the point is, though. I don't know what the actual point is. I don't. I it's
Well, I think the overall point is that like your tendency to readily accept like these standpoints of the Constitution, gives us rights and protects us, and the revolution was a rebellion against the British crown. It's like, to me, it seems like you're reframing history through like a lens in which you wish was communist, or like not wish was communist, or that a lens in which you can then try to grow your movement by creating this ideology in which the essence of America was actually communist at its founding, or
that's
socialist.
what that's what communists say about all human history, which is why Marx said communism is the riddle of history solved.
But is the like, I mean, brought it up once before, but like, how is the means by which the 13 colonies were set up? How is that not part of simply Western individualism that existed in its original home?
Communism came from the West. How is it not part of Western individualism?
I mean, yeah, the theory came from the West, but why does that why would that make it Western?
Why would the same thing but for yours?
Why does the Constitution reflect Western individualism?
in a way that makes communism impossible, yes.
I think the way in which class relations have been established in this country is a product of the nature in which the country was established, and you're reflecting back upon the history of which the country was established and reinterpreting it as being part of human fundamental nature, which is socialism. I agree that like the collective essence of humanity is fundamentally socialist. The default of humanity is social. But how can you say that since the default of humanity, how is the American Revolution default? How does that represent the default or closer to?
What?
You're saying that the American Revolution and the
Are you on
establishment of
shrooms? LSD?
no.
What are you actually asking me right now? What are you actually asking me?
I'm asking you. Fuck, I don't even remember what I was saying. I was asking you if like how can you reframe the American Revolution as somewhat of a socialist phenomenon, or the establishment of America as a socialist phenomenon?
Oh my god, it's just like a pointless confusion that if you used your common sense would not be a problem. Why is this a problem? For what is it a problem? Communists. Okay, I have to explain to you like the philosophy of dialectical time. Is that what you want? Do I have to explain to you the philosophy of dialectical time about how the essence of what something is actually arrives from the future and isn't buried in the past? And the archaeo-modernism of how, for example, the future actually realizes the essence of things in the past. These are all convoluted philosophical bullshit things that aren't needed for people to fucking understand or make sense of it. When the Soviets talked about Ivan the Terrible or Alexander Nevsky or the historical heroes of Russian civilization that were not explicitly communist, I mean, regular people understood it and it wasn't a problem. You seem to think that normal people give a fuck about philosophy, and they don't. They care about what makes sense. Now, what you should really be asking me is how could it make sense that you could reinterpret American history through a communist lens? Well, it makes perfect sense. It's been done before. There's no reason it wouldn't fucking make sense. You don't need to talk about philosophy to answer that fucking question.
I mean, colonial expansion isn't really,
because America's an undefined thing. It's not set in stone or defined, okay? And if communists are the best equipped to represent the American people and make sense of their historical experiences and their tradition through scientific socialism, that's something they would prove in reality. That they would succeed the history and destiny of America, thereby revealing the essence of what America always was the whole time. I mean, you're making it seem like the founding of America is something finished, and it's not. It's one chapter in a larger history that is never fully finished in some kind of idea. The real question is, why would communists be the best to succeed and seize hegemony over this? And I will tell you, the answer lies in scientific socialism being a more correct, literally correct way of relating to the world and reality.
like you put out like a list of policy, quote unquote, policy changes. Is that the basis of which like the patriotic socialist movement is the patriotic socialist movement like these are our policy changes we're going to make? Patriotic socialist
no, it's not. It's literally it's literally as simple. It's literally as fucking simple as saying I'm a socialist, and my ground zero, my ground from which I begin, is not a blank slate or an ideal to conform reality to, but the actual reality I live in, which is a country, specifically the American country, and that I want to serve what's in the best interest of the American people, and that is how I want my socialism to be framed. And I don't want socialism to be framed in terms of an alien foreign ideology that comes at the expense of people's real lives. It's like that fucking simple. And I don't know why it's being complicated so much.
You mean you don't know why like people on Twitter and shit like take issue
You
with
or people on I don't know where the problem is coming from. I don't know what the
I
problem
don't
is here.
I don't bitch about it. I just don't necessarily like fully believe in specific future, but I don't think it's like I don't think it's like a evil phenomenon or something
All
that's
right, well,
bound.
you can have your Reddit socialism and good luck.
I do not have Reddit socialism.
Yes, you do.
No, I do.
You want to have a Reddit
Right?
debate
No, I have.
socialism where you just type on Reddit.
No,
You're the type that wants to type like 10,000 paragraphs on Reddit, and that's just what you
no,
want to do. You just want to type
no,
paragraphs on Reddit.
absolutely. I
Yeah,
don't do that. I don't do that though. So you can say that, but it's like
you just want to pontificate and type type paragraphs on Reddit to
see,
no
like to me,
avail.
but it's like I don't do that. So when you tell me that, it's like I'm like, what the fuck? Where the fuck is he getting this from? You know?
So where do you type your paragraphs?
I don't type paragraphs. I don't type or argue like in paragraphs with people. Like you, I think you have this concocted idea of your haters, and that's you are, and that's like it's like you shouldn't do this. Really, you're like imagining me in the vein of your hater.
I just don't know where the problem's coming from.
I mean, I think the problem for most people is coming from it's sort of I don't want to say like American centric, but it's like yeah, you're not gonna agree. I just don't. I don't see like the. I do see like I don't agree necessarily, and you can explain it further if you want. But that the founding of America isn't over. Like, don't you think there's like clear distinctions between like previous states of society post colonialism
Not
or
in
post?
terms of what they mean. No. I think meaning is never finished. It's always open.
But I guess that's it. You're saying like the meaning with patriotic socialism, the meaning of the American flag is different from what it is prior, or do you think it already like? I just don't see how it you differentiate on a mass scale. But I don't. I feel like we're going in circles. But
I'm actually not saying it's different. I'm saying you've taken that meaning for granted.
what do you mean? Like I've interpreted it narrowly, or what? Like what do you mean? I took it for granted. I don't understand. You
Can
there?
I be honest with you? When I talk to you, it's a lot like how you go to a hookah bar and there's a guy who's microdosing on shrooms and
Yeah.
he starts a conversation with you and you don't know where it's going and you don't know what he's trying to say.
Well, I mean, we've
And
talked about a lot of
it's just he talks so long and you keep trying to say, okay, what is the point? And it's almost like he's talking about nothing and just nothing at all.
I mean, the reason why is because I see like the reason why I bring up so many different things is because it's not like it's like the reason why I have the view I do have on patriotic socialism is because of an aggregate of many different individual things that, when put together, form somewhat of a I don't know unsuccess like I don't want to say unsuccessful because you're right in the fact that like infrared does exist and patriotic socialism does exist, but uh, I just yeah I don't really But I don't. When I say I don't really believe that patriotic socialist future has like a strong, will have a strong grip, doesn't mean that I don't think you should be trying. But I just don't. I think it's inevitable that when you adopt this framing of American history inside of America, talking to Americans, they're not going to move from that anti-establishment. They're not going to move from it. And then then you also have the question: is how does that How does that? No, it's not ideological per se, but how does that anti-establishment narrative or energy even directed against the forces of imperial? Like how? Like is patriotic socialism? I guess not. It's not trying to voluntarily end imperialism through electoralism. I don't see like what the future of patriotic socialism is, but I guess it can just play out however it does.
What are you asking?
Like, how does patriotic future have this patriotic socialism actually implement, quote unquote, its agenda? Like, through what mechanisms does this happen? Through the U.S. government?
Through the party.
Through the party. So it could be independent of the U.S. government.
We don't know. We just want a communist party. Is that so much to ask? To have our own communist party? Why does it have to be this hard to have our own communist party?
I mean, there is a communist
That's
party.
it. There you go. There is, and that's what we're fighting for.
But isn't that communist party that currently exists in America kind of kneecapped and says ridiculous shit all the time?
Yeah, and that's why we're sending our people there, because we want to take it over.
Okay. So then, I mean, is the future of CPUSA, like CPUSA 2036, like what is that? Is that just when you take over the Communist Party and then lead like a mass movement?
Yup.
All right. Do you see? Here's a question though. Would you exclude people from the Communist Party who do not like the American flag but are still Marxist-Leninists?
Yes.
So if you're a Marxist-Leninist and you support China and you hate the deep state and you want to put Hillary Clinton in prison and you fucking hate the elite and you think both parties are just a fucking PR mechanism for deep state, but you hate the American flag because you notice that the bombs that are dropped in Syria have the American flag on them. I'm not saying you have to, or that's the correct position abstractly, but I'm just saying, let's say that's the reasoning why. Let's say,
Yep. If you're a wrecker, you should not be allowed in the party. 1000%.
No matter what. So if you fucking hate the American flag, you're
yep.
not
If you raise problems about that fucking flag, you should not be allowed.
There are a lot of communists in history who didn't like it.
Well,
I mean, what was the Black Panthers Party's stance on the flag? Did they love the flag?
they weren't part of the Communist Party. They created their own party that was only for black people.
Yeah, and they didn't like the flag.
Because they were exclusively black party. Why would they care about the fucking flag? They wanted to make their own nation.
I just don't see how could you, if there are a group of people who have been wronged by the U.S. state and they hate the American flag, why the fuck?
Then they have two options.
As a disqualifier.
Then they have two options. Either fight to be separatists and form their own state, create their own party to advocate independently for their own interests, or work within the American state and thereby have to tolerate the fucking flag. If you want to work within the American state, you win the majority, which means you respect the fucking flag. If you don't want to go down that approach, then you can fight for separatism or some shit. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
You're gonna just disqualify like a lot of fucking like people.
Yeah, I am. I am gonna disqualify every fucking person who wants to shit on this country while this country feeds them. Go form your own country.
Does this country feed them? Like,
form your own country.
Feed them? Because it's not really just this country that feeds the American people. Like,
I don't care. I'm sick of people who want to just be here and shit on this fucking country while what? Then stop trying to play. Listen, if you want to create,
but how could you have this position when you know that America fucking bombs the fuck out of other countries? Like, how the fuck can you?
Because we are still our own fucking country.
But why are you disqualifying communists who fucking?
Because they're bums. Because they're fucking bums. That's why. They're fucking bums, and I'm sick of communists being the party of bums. Because I'm against bums. I'm against Brooklyn fucking professional managerials in their fucking lofty fucking apartments, sitting on their fucking ass on their fucking pillows, bitching and whining and saying, I don't want bums. I'm sick of the bums.
They'll hang an American flag up, for sure.
No, they won't. The fucking Brooklyn professional managerials who say, I'm against this country. Then fucking leave. Then leave.
Oh, no, a lot of them love America. Like, a lot of them are fervent.
99% hate America. 99% pretend to hate America.
Yeah, they pretend.
Listen, we're not going to have a fucking party where people are trying to literally...
Go ahead.
Where you're trying to win the majority of people, and you want to work within the system of this country, within the state of this country, and somehow rule over the majority of people while shitting over those fucking people and telling them, hey, fuck you, fuck your flag, and we're going to be the tyrants of your lives. No, it's not going to fucking happen.
Why does the flag represent those? You were talking about how the meaning of the flag is changing. It can change, right? Like the meanings, how someone interprets the flag can be different from person to person, right?
No, I think no. Just no. I don't care about exceptions. I don't care about exceptions. Generalizations are correct. Exceptions mean nothing. I don't care about individual exceptions.
It's so odd you would have this stance.
I care about reality. I don't care if there's a Redditor who has an opinion and likes to take LSD and talk about shit for 5 hours and to no avail. I don't care about those exceptions. It doesn't matter politically. I don't think you know what you're looking for here or what exactly it is you want.
No, I mean, I do know.
It seriously sounds like...
It's an aggregate of multiple different things in which I think culminate in...
It really sounds like you are microdosing on shrooms, to be completely honest.
I mean, the real reason why is probably because I'm on a live stream. I haven't been on a live stream in a really, really long time. So my mind is running like a lot. So I'm thinking about shit. That's the actual reason. But if,
How come when it comes to like something simple, like let's say your car was stuck in the snow and you are just trying to convince someone to help you get the car out of the fucking snow. Why don't you give why don't you give them as much of a hard time as you give me, right? I'm trying to do something very simple. You give me a really hard time. When it comes to something simple, like let's say someone's car is stuck someone's car is stuck in the snow. You say, "Hey, can you help me?" And you say, "Oh, okay, listen, I'm going to stay here and we're going to talk about it." And you sit for 5 hours talking about the quantum mechanics involved in getting the car out of the snow. Why? Either get it out of the snow or don't. It's not actually that complicated.
But what does this have to do with what we were talking about?
Because it's like I'm doing something very simple. Socialist patriotism, very simple.
Yeah, why?
And you're just you're needlessly overly complicating it for no reason.
just say why do you have this you can't be against the American flag? Like why don't you just allow both? Like why is that the signifier for what constitutes like someone who's capable of joining patriotic socialism?
Because if you're gonna whine about the flag, it probably means you're a fucking wrecker.
Or it means you recognize that the American state is a fucking farce and murders people, and that's what's associated with.
Then you can go form a punk rock band and leave the party alone.
Like you're just engaging in culture.
Then form a punk rock band.
Engaging in culture worship.
No, I'm not. I don't. It has no political meaning that the America's a farce. Okay, then I don't know what to tell you. Go form a punk rock band.
Yeah, that's literally liberal culture worship.
That's what it means.
Like punk rock, man.
Okay, I'm gonna explain this to you. A communist party is supposed to be made up of sober-minded professionals who serve the people, fight for the people, be champions of the people, in a sober, very pragmatic, sober, down-to-earth, common-sense kind of way. Work for the people. It is not a medium to vent your moral indignations and your moral disappointments and ideals. It is a very simple professional kind of thing, okay? So when you have people come and raise problems with the flag, America's a farce, and all, we don't have time to deal with the angst of teenagers. Please understand and respect what a communist party is supposed to do. It's not an outlet for teenage angst. It's not.
So every communist who wanted to burn the American flag exhibiting teenage angst.
Absolutely.
I think that's like solely an American perspective. I don't think that's it.
No, I think if you burn the American flag and you live in this country, it's probably because you're a teenager with teenage angst.
You can go around burning some symbolic gesture around too, but you think there's a difference between whether you live in the country or...
I don't care about people who are disappointed in the ideal of America. I don't take those people seriously. I think they're children. I care about people who care about the material reality of America, not ideals. I don't care about ideals. I care about people who want to fight for people who live and breathe in this fucking country and fight for the working class of this country. That's what a communist cares about. It's not about the farce of this or that. That means nothing at all. It's absolutely immaterial. Can you eat a farce? Can you eat one?
Like, are you asking if a farce is material?
Can you eat it? Can you eat a farce? What can you do with a farce? What is that?
Farce is a description of...
Okay, that's where you have a problem. It means nothing. It is absolutely, completely meaningless.
Why do you think burning the American flag means that they're upset that the idea of America is worse, rather than them just recognizing it, to them?
Because you said it's because they recognize America's a farce.
Okay, well, I didn't mean because of that idea specifically. I meant because they recognize, is the imperialist, nation.
In no way does recognizing imperialism justify burning the fucking American flag when you live in this country. This country feeds you, houses you, clothes you, it builds you, everything in this country made by the working class for you. When you fucking having a problem with your electricity or your gas, you call the working class to come and fix your fucking house. The truckers of this country give you your goods, shift these goods. And you live in this country, and then you disrespect everyone by burning the flag because of imperialism. What does that have to do with the people? Then live in a different country.
But why is it? It's like you narrow it down to one thing. It's like the American flag represents... Like you're mentioning, the people who come and fix your car. What about the police who will come and beat the fuck out of you?
So there's a problem with this country. Are you going to be positive and want to fix the country or help the country? So why are you bitching about it? Then leave. If you don't like how the police treat you, if you don't like how the police treat you in this country, then you fight for a better country or you get the fuck out. What you don't do is sit around and wreck the party. Stay away from the party. The party's here to help the country. The party's not here to shit on the country because the country disappointed you. It's here to help the country and help the people. That's what the party's here for. We don't want people who are just gonna sit around and bitch and whine and wreck. We don't.
See, it's like you don't want people who bitch and whine. These are all things that are associated with burning the American. Like, why is it even? I didn't even talk about burning the American flag. I was just saying, if you do not, agree with displaying it or anything like that, it's like you're protecting, like the essence of the Communist Party. Is that like the American Communist Party? You think, like, why does burning the flag pose an actual issue?
Because it's stupid and edgy and reflects an adolescent mentality.
Okay, what about just like not? What about hating the American flag, but not being like a weirdo? Not just, I don't want to say hating it like you're psycho, but what about just like not playing it or not being fun? Is that you can't
well, the party's gonna fly it. So are you gonna make a problem out of that, or are you gonna keep it to yourself?
I mean, if the patriotic socialism movement was actually pro-China and anti-establishment and going somewhere and flew the American flag, if it was actually working, then I would keep it to myself.
So there you go. Every time there's going to be a problem, you're going to say, the reason is because of the flag. Or the flag is a demonic. No, it's not. No, then yeah, get the fuck out of the party. We don't need that. We don't need ankle biters.
It just seems so odd that it seems so odd that you could recognize how fucking horrible. The only way it could make sense is if you're purely coming from the point of if you live in this country and you're some sort of anarchist.
Because I'll tell you why. Because in my heart, I have already destroyed the world in my heart. The whole universe has been destroyed in my heart. I'm over it. I'm over the apocalypse. I don't fucking care anymore. I'm over it. Now I live in reality and I care about the real world. All of that moral bullshit, I don't care about that world you think you're living in. That world is already gone in my heart. So I'm concerned with reality now. I live in reality. I don't care. I just don't care about how morally inconsistent or immoral America is, or how wrong its ideals are. I care about actual material reality. That's what I care about.
But how are those things separate from?
Just think of me as a cynical KGB agent. Can you just think of me as that? Because it's like that simple.
You're a cynical KGB agent trying to bring communism.
I don't have the naiveties you have. It's just that simple.
Some of the shit you say makes sense to me, and then this shit with, having this staunch view on the American flag. It's not about like the flag. I don't really care about the flag itself. It's the actual practice you want to engage in, including people mean, I'm just. That's where that's really where I think it's like that's where it's revealing. That's like where all my criticisms I've been.
Okay,
making.
this is our country. This is the flag of our country. Grow up or stay in Peter Pan forever. Just stay away from the party. We live in the real world. This is our flag of our country. Represents our people. The country we live in. We are living in it. Just sober up. When we're anti-imperialist, by the way, we mean it. You know, when we say we're anti-imperialist, we actually mean it, which means that we actually do believe it's realistic to stop the wars and fight against imperialism. It's not like an ideal utopia we have. We actually are serious, professional, business-like people who are saying, yes, end the wars, yes, fight the deep state, yes, institute the Hamilton system of Alexander Hamilton, yes, build up the productive forces. These are all very realistic things we're proposing. We're not doing it from a perspective of redeeming childhood fantasies or imposing utopias or ideals. This is something we actually take seriously in a business-like way.
How do you, in a business-like way, end U.S. imperialism? Or end...
You seriously make the case to the American people that the wars not only go against their interests, but are being created by people who are directly responsible for their immiseration, which is literally true. You tell the truth. And they already know that, by the way. They're already saying it even without our intervention. American imperialism has the ruling class of American imperialism is not the people.
So do you just like put all the Navy warships into the museums? Like, do you still operate the same military?
What do you mean? That's like 5 million years steps away. Hypothetically, if we got to power, what would we do with all these surplus military weapons we probably wouldn't need?
Yeah.
We'd probably recycle them. Probably we'd probably beat the swords into plowshares and make something productive out of them. I don't fucking know. Probably sell them or do something.
I'm saying it's a pretty big issue considering that.
No, it's not.
Yeah, because a lot of the American economy is not only on investing in new military equipment, but it's also about maintaining...
Okay, and we'd make an economy that's based in investing in infrastructure like China does, instead of the fucking military.
Yeah, good luck.
Okay, well, I don't see what's so unrealistic about it when a country of 1.4 billion people already showed how it can be done.
Because you're going up with people against people with fucking...
And we're taking them on. And we're not We're not flinching.
You need soldiers, just so you know. You need literal soldiers.
What?
Like if you're an actual threat to that established order, they're gonna fucking kill you. Like they just
okay, then I'll be a martyr.
Well, I'm not saying you need to be a martyr.
Then I'm taking that risk. I'm taking that risk. I'm taking that risk. Okay, I'm taking that risk.
You would need that.
I don't care. I'm taking the risk. Anything happens to me, happens to me. I'm in a very good mental state. I have never had bad thoughts mentally, so if they do some shit to me, that's something I'm risking.
If you're communist, then you have to have soldiers who are willing to fight for you.
No, you don't. No, you fucking don't. No, you fucking don't. Because...
100%.
No, you don't.
100%.
No, you don't. If the
weren't you talking about the importance of...
Stop fucking interrupting me and stop wasting my time. You don't need fucking soldiers because we still are a country of laws. And if the government just decides to kill every communist arbitrarily, guess what? That will have legal ramifications for our state.
What? You think they're gonna have legal ramifications?
Yes, it will. It'll have there have to be a coup of some kind. The Constitution would have to be formally suspended, and it would have all sorts of ramifications. It will be a crisis of legitimacy. Yes.
It's like, what makes you think at this point in reality these forces will be bound by the Constitution?
I just don't think you understand how the world works. That's just that simple.
Oh, thanks, man. That's really kind. What I'm saying is, if like you really want to be a threat to these things, and number one, you're gonna have to have people who are willing to fight for you and defend infrared.
It's fucking enough. It's honestly enough, okay? For how fucking long, man? I'm sorry. It would never end. There's always a new fucking dialogue tree. There's always a new fucking dialogue tree.